This program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
Welcome. My name is Dr. Miller. I'm the chair of the Waterways Park Commission. Since there's a large crowd here tonight, I will just let you know how the general meeting will flow tonight. We'll start with the new business. First, read the presentation by staff, and then the commission will have question and discussion. And then the applicant will present, and then the commission may have questions and comments for them. After that, we'll open up the floor to public input. Since there are so many of you here tonight, we do request a 3-minute limit per person speaking. Pat at the upper front there has a little timer with red, yellow, green, yellow, and red lights, kind of let you know how much time is left. You don't have to use all the 3 minutes. You can be as brief for 3 minutes if you want. Since there are so many of you here tonight, it's helpful if you come up and speak if you have new information to present. You're free to present too. We're not going to stop anyone from speaking, but just try to keep it brief. There are so many here tonight. And then after the public speaks, we may ask you a question if we have a question for one of you. And then once all the public is speaking, discussion will take place among the commission again, and then there will be a motion and a vote on the business items tonight. So with that, I will start the meeting here. Call to order the June 26th meeting of the Waterways and Parks Commission. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes from the May 22nd, 2019 meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? John, is there a second?
Second.
John, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. New business. First item is a recommendation to approve naming the forestry special area to Veterans Tribute Park. Jeff?
Good evening. I think it would be a good idea to cover a little bit of the history of how we got here today. There's several of the. I'll try to speak louder. We're going to look at the history of how we got here. There's several people here that, especially with commission members, that were not here when the original agreement was drafted between the Veterans Foundation and the city. So the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, was signed in May of 2017 between the city and the Veterans Group. The MOU was for the Veterans Group to fundraise $2 million, actually more than $2 million, to put in a Veterans Tribute Trail along with a gathering space where families, friends, and veterans could gather to have an area for remembrance and reflection. Additionally, the Veterans Foundation was going to fundraise for a restroom and pavilion area and the lighting of the trail, along with other amenities with monuments that would associate from the Civil War all the way to the current wars that we have going on in our history. Additionally, they were going to fundraise to pave a parking lot that would be used as a combination for the city central maintenance facility, this facility that we're here today, and also for the park users. So it's a significant contribution that is going to be fundraised for that will actually turn a green space that we currently have into a community park. During the time that this has been going on, we've had over 11 public hearings. There's been over 100 emails, phone calls, meetings with the North Riverfronts Neighborhood Association and several neighborhood associations that were attended by the group and also the city. 25 newspaper articles, 17 news media reports, over 200 media content, commercials that are on the TV's public service announcements through WAU, WQOW, and Fox 25. The site plan was approved by City Council on February 12th of 2019, and construction is planned for phase 1 this summer. A request for naming by the Veterans Foundation was received by the Community Services Department on March 10th, 2019. That was reviewed and forwarded on to the Parks and the Waterways and Parks Commission to hear this request on March 27, 2019, and was forwarded to the next steps of the process by the Waterways and Parks Commission. That was a 60-day public comment period that was started on March 28th and ended on May 26th. Wanted to go over what the area is that we're talking about here. You're actually in this building up here, so just south of us is the Forest Street Special Area. That's the classification that the city has given it through our Parks Master Plan because of the amenities it does not have in it. So this is something that was named by the city as a geographical area. It's a common nomenclature that we give parks that don't have a request for naming. You can see in this area we have the community gardens, and I wanted to talk about some information that has been out there that the community gardens would somehow go away with the Veterans Trail coming in or the naming of this park. That's not true. The city of Eau Claire and the community gardens have an agreement together. The only group that could change that would be the city council. So the community gardens, we have a separate agreement with this group. I want to go over a little bit on the park naming policy and what's the purpose of it. The purpose of the policy is to establish standard procedures and guidelines for the naming of public parklands and facilities owned and or operated by the city of Eau Claire and under the jurisdiction of the Community Services Department, Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Division. The authorization of the policy, the naming of sites shall be the function of the Waterways and Parks Commission. All requests for the proposed naming must go through the Waterways and Parks Commission and forwarded to the City Council for final approval. What are the objectives of the policy? It's to provide name identification. We need that, one, because we have community members that want to reserve park space. And that's important that we know what park space they're reserving. Also, we need it to keep track of what we're doing maintenance on and what we have for assets in the park. The other objective is to provide citizen input. One of the grievances I've heard in the last more than 60 days is that the public hasn't had an opportunity to weigh in on this item. That is why we have within this policy a 60-day public comment period. It wasn't meant to take a name proposal, put it through Waterways, put it through the City Council without anybody having a chance to talk about it. And then it also, the other objective is to ensure the naming is controlled by the City Council with recommendations from the Waterways and Parks Commission with advice from the Community Services Department. So what's the process? The process requires a request in writing to the Director of Community Services. At that point, we have to review if it's an appropriate request for a naming of a park. And there's some criteria that I'll go over later, but one of those criteria is that the group or the organization is committing a significant contribution to the park or facility. Also, we look at constructing a monument sign identifying new park name that will complement and be consistent with our other park signs in the city. That is something that has already been discussed with the Veterans Group, and they plan on putting a monument sign in the park if this is approved. The director will determine if the suggested name is included in the list of qualifying names and submit for consideration to the Waterways and Parks Commission. What are the qualifying names? They're split up in 5 categories: places and features. 1, it could be a natural phenomenon, recognizable area for the neighborhood, descriptive names, horticulture, outstanding, feature, adjoining neighborhood, subdivision, street, or school. Historic events could look at battles, discoveries, explorations, community development. Organizations such as civic, veterans, or fraternal. People, large donors to a park. Historic groups, local war heroes, national war heroes, state officials, local officials, and local individuals. And then great ideas: ecological, friendship, independence, peace. So the criteria that we look at after looking at the qualifying names: an individual or an organization that contributes significantly to the acquisition or development. This is typically not less than 50% of the value of the property. The property on Forest Street Green area is estimated to be worth $1.4 million. The contribution by the Veterans Group is over $2 million. So it qualified under that criteria. Outstanding accomplishments by an individual and an individual who provided an exceptional service are the other criteria. Talk a little bit about the 60-day public comment period. That started on March 28th, the day after the Waterways and Parks Commission recommended moving forward with the next step. We asked the public for comments to be sent to the community services at eauclairwi.gov or by phone or U.S. mail. Some responded to City Council and Waterways Parks Commission. This was not directed by city staff. Public comment period ended on May 26th. So the results of the 60-day public comment. Total responses, we had 206. Those in favor of naming was 179 or 87%. Against the naming, 16 or 8%. And other, 11%, which is 5%. Those that were in the category of other, they didn't really specify either way. They had an alternate name given that supported both causes, I guess. So that's why we put those in other.
What name did the 87% support?
Please allow the staff to finish the presentation. Thank you.
Please.
So, for the park naming policy, the Waterways and Parks Commission will discuss the naming request and all public comments received during the 60-day public comment period. They will then recommend to the City Council in the affirmative or negative for final approval. With that, I can take questions from the Commission.
Any questions for Jeff? Kirk?
Jeff, when I read the naming policy, I can quote it for you here, it looked as though a provision was made for multiple names to be submitted in writing, and it looked as though we would be looking at and debating maybe several names, but I don't recall that when we talked about this in March that we really had only just the one formal request. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I think the way that was written is that there could be more than one park naming, or there could be different subsections of a park that could be named. But in this request, there was one name request for the one location.
And we passed the deadline, right? The March 28th started the clock ticking for the one and only 60-day public comment period?
Yes, the 60 days is,
In other words, if someone submitted another name request tonight in writing, there's no additional 60-day waiting period for that. It's done.
Could he stand up and talk louder? We can't hear back here.
So I'm just saying, if someone were to submit another name formally in writing tonight, it's too late. It's past your one and only 60-day waiting period. Is that correct?
if your question is someone wanted to submit a different name, they would have to go through the same process of submitting a letter in writing, why they feel that the name would be appropriate, and that would have to be reviewed by my department, and then if it meets the criteria, it would be submitted to the Waterways and Parks Commission at another meeting for consideration.
Any other questions for Jeff? Oh, Tom?
Just to clarify, then, the role that we have tonight is to say yes or no to the Veterans Tribute Park. Is that correct? We're not in the, into looking at other names. We're saying either yes or no to this name. Is that correct? Am I wrong?
You're voting on the affirmative to rename the park. There is an option to recommend an amendment that you could also consider. That would go on to the city council as a recommendation.
And that recommendation could be another name.
Could be another name that is being forwarded by the Waterways and Parks Commission.
John?
So the 87% name changing is we talking about the veteran tribute that we're voting for tonight? Is that the 87%?
That's correct. 87% that voted in favor are in favor of the name being the Veterans Tribute Park.
Any other questions for Jeff from the commission? Seeing none, Jeff.
So we do have the applicant here tonight, Mark Beckfield from the Veterans Foundation, would like to say a few words.
If you could please, we'll ask everybody to state your name and address just for the record, please.
And I'll make it nice and loud for the people in the back of the room. Okay? Thank you. All right. My name is Mark Beckfield, B-E-C-K-F-I-E-L-D, the spokesperson, non-veteran for the Eau Claire Veterans Foundation here in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, established in 2016 and authorized by the state of Wisconsin and the federal government as a nonprofit 501c in 2017. I'm going to take my time and explain this because a lot of people have said a lot of misinformation that didn't bother to come out until the last couple of weeks. So please listen closely and I will clarify some of the facts that you've already seen, so I'll ignore those. I find it very hard to believe that I'd be here tonight defending a name for a veteran tribute park. I want to first off say thank you to the veterans in the room. We don't say thank you enough. I find it kind of amusing tonight that the city council was discussing the importance of a name of a restroom in Owen Park. The name is important, they said, and yes, it's important to veterans. With an 88, or was it 87% I saw tonight, approval rating from the city's own Park, Water and Park Committee survey that people sat in your same chairs and did in 2005 is something I'm rather upset about because the veterans followed every procedure in military fashion as I would and you would expect. Do we have named parks in Eau Claire? Yes. They're rare, but this one's deserved. We have Carson Park, Owen Park, Randall Park, Wilson Park, and others. And guess what? There are gardens inside those parks too. Most of the parks' names are because of a financial contribution. And I want to say to you, there's more than finance, the $2 million that makes this park deserved to have the name veteran in it. The 12% who do not support the name say they were not included and blindsided. I want to address that first. The 12 public meetings, including 5 neighborhood meetings that the gardeners were all invited to according to Tammy Schlafnagel, did not come. First question I ask when they get up to speak is, did you look at the video? Did you come to the meetings? Let's talk about the video that was so controversial about a year ago. The gardens were not included in the video, was the complaint. Emails have floated around about that to be included. You'll find out why I find that kind of interesting as well. But how did you know that it was not being called a veteran park? By the way, to the people sitting in this front, I don't have enough because there's literally 70, 80 people that I didn't expect. Here is the web page, a copy, right next to the video that you click on for that same complaint. And guess what's right above the video that you click on to see? It clearly says, what is Veteran Park? Can you guys hear that in the back? Am I speaking loud enough?
Yeah.
Blindsided. The ones that were blindsided was the county board. By the way, I've had phone calls from them apologizing for their actions and to keep going, and I will. So the number one problem of the video is now they didn't know. Well, look right there on that page. There's 2 places, Veteran Park and what is Veteran Park? Answer that question is my first question to those who have not bothered to call me. And yet they say I'm not inclusive or a good leader. I can send you the emails if you'd like me to, anybody. We did not listen when we attended these meetings. That's something else. By the way, the people in the hallway can come around the back if you'd like to. Love to have you. Oh, you're not allowed? Sorry. We did not listen. Well, let's talk about that. Originally, the original drawing showed a blacktop 1,800-foot path. The veterans asked us, or not veterans, the gardeners and the neighborhood asked, it should be concrete. Well, guess what? Concrete is what we want anyway, but it's more expensive. It's double the cost, but it will last twice as long. So we thought, guess what? Not a bad idea. Let's adjust that. Better access to the garden. There's going to be a parking lot right from Forest Street that goes up right next to the pavilion that has a gateway to allow them to go directly to their garden. It will go right off of here. This will be a parking lot that they designed, free of charge, by Lena Peterson for their ability to cross the path. Not better access than that, is there? That's one of the things they did bring up. Parking has been a big issue in the area. Veterans are going to take care of that parking lot, which is an issue. Plus the street construction was adjusted because guess who else talked about? The bikers, pedestrians. We had lots of meetings that people brought these in. Another thing that was brought up by the neighborhood. We'd like this electrified. We'd like electricity. Hey, isn't that a cool idea? We're going to put electricity in there. We didn't listen to them on that. New, modern, flush toilet bathrooms instead of a porta potty in the middle of the garden. They have a porta potty right here. I invite you to drive through it, take a look. Restrooms will be available. By the way, this area here is called the Riverside. This is the neighborhood park with a bathroom, play area, grass, and a little garden in it. Lighting for security. One of the biggest concerns from the neighbor for us, or for them, was, hey, take a little trip down there between 11 and 2 o'clock in the morning and walk through the park. It's one of the hottest areas in Eau Claire for crime. As a matter of fact, when we had a tour through there, we had to call 911 for a passed out drug addict under the bridge. Maybe some lighting and some additional traffic will help solve that problem, because I am told that 300 to 400 visitors go through Phoenix Park. Well, guess what? I think that number is going to go way up, because people are going to come from all over to see the special park that's designed for the people from the Chippewa Valley who served with honor, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I'm not talking to you about spending a lot of money. I'm talking about the people who gave their lives for this country.
Excuse me, Chairman, could I ask a question?
No. The presenter will finish presentation first.
Can we cut the anger mark?
You bet.
Thank you.
I get a little excited on this topic,
It's
and
all right. but-
you know,
Keep it up.
thank you.
Please continue.
I will bring it down. But I want to make sure you can hear in the back. Asking for better water. We're going to see what we can do about that. Lately, they asked if they could put in a greenhouse. Did the Veteran Parks project leaders listen to the 5 neighborhood meetings? I think I answered that question by all the things we said we'd take care of. By the way, these additions, according to our architects and engineers, additional cost of the project would add in excess of $300,000. And I'm confident that the project will do so. And you know I respect you very much, so I'll do it. Public naming policy was adopted in 2005. There's a couple of those people who are from the neighborhood and they remain anonymous that signed on to that policy and wrote it down and adopted it, and it was also adopted by the city of Eau Claire. Let's talk about the same rights. It's for a city park. It's a city comment period. Because your address of where your home is mean that you should have more say in a city park than anybody else? It states clearly there is a notification process of 60 days, comments to all citizens' input. That was done. It was actually extended for that purpose. We heard tonight 87 point something. In a political year, if somebody wins by 5%, it's considered a landslide. It has provisions for certain things like local history, battles, significant contributions financially. And veterans are specifically listed on that. The real reason is not money. I want to explain that. Money is not the reason you should vote yes tonight. Take that one off the table. The public is shown in their support financially. They are willing to give millions of dollars to see these veterans honored in Eau Claire. The real reason, and I hope I don't start crying. All right, I'm getting it nearby. The real reason to call it was the cost to the community in lives. The tears of the families, not millions of dollars. That's nothing in comparison to the people who were affected and their families were affected because of the loss of their loved ones. They're donating to this park because they want to honor the people from the Chippewa Valley. In closing, one of the major goals of the project was to educate, just one of the many goals, to educate about the cost of freedom, and freedom is not free. There are over 3,000 stones. By the way, I don't know if you guys looked in front of you. Maybe you took them away. I don't know where they went. Over here, Mark. See those stones over there? I want to grab one for a second here. This gentleman fought on the battleship Wisconsin, right here. A veteran. Sorry about that, it's heavy. And I want to talk about those stones for a minute.
Please keep your motions and sound down.
I will,
please.
I'm sorry.
Maybe we can't hear you back here if you turn it down.
All right, I'll try and stay vocal for you. These are the stones. You can put that one back if you'd like. But I wanted to show you it's a substantial piece of. These are the stones for the veterans that they're buying from their families. On the other side are different businesses, and I want to share with you one thing. Hardee's just donated $100,000 to this project for a veteran park. Redstones, I want to talk about those in a minute. And I apologize for my passion that I have for this project. There are 3,000 total stones. 373 are this stone that's called blood red marble. The KIAs, 373 people who died from the 373, thank you, people who died from the Chippewa Valley will all be in the Honors Mall. These will be scattered like drops of blood through the park in the Honor Mall. These are the people who paid the big price. And a huge loss to loved ones. But now, we just learned in the Eau Claire Leader Telegram on Memorial Day about the 374th. He's right here. If you read the paper, and if you know your history, his name is Frank E. Nichols. He's a fireman on the Oklahoma, December 7th, from Eau Claire. The 374th person died on board this ship, and they did not know his name or where he came from until recently because of DNA testing. And that soldier, sailor, is from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and I hope to God we can honor him soon for his services to our city, our county, and the Chippewa Valley. In the park, there will be an additional 100 stones.
Mr.
Yes.
Beckfield?
Almost done.
Well, you were talking about the park very nice. Do you have any more comments about the naming of the park rather than
I do.
the facility of the park itself?
I do.
Because we do have a lot of public who want to see
I'm
tonight,
sure.
so we need to keep the meeting moving a little, please.
Okay. I will make it move real quick. There'll be 100 of these that'll be blank. And we hope, we pray, that we never have to fill these stones in. Now, the naming of the park, the most common name of a park across this country is a veteran park. We do not have one. It is time to have one. The people have spoken about the name. And I want to clarify, we did communicate. It gets a little frustrating when people say you didn't do things you know you did. It's, to me, time to get this done. Questions from you? Yes, sir.
You say you had 5 neighborhood meetings there, and was the concept of naming the park Veterans Tribute Park discussed at those meetings?
Did we ever talk about the name park? Yes.
Specifically.
Specifically named.
Veterans Tribute Park.
No,
Bill, you were there. I mean, I don't know. You're saying no?
I'm saying no.
I don't know.
We had a YouTube
Oh.
video.
When there's public comments, you can address this issue if you like.
I'm the neighborhood rep, so I will be following Mark.
Very, very good, okay.
I think they can answer that themselves. I can tell you that if you looked in the media, you looked on TV, you listened on radio, you read in the newspaper, it talks specifically about a tribute park.
Can I ask another question?
Yes, you can.
You're on the County Board of Supervisors,
Yes, I'm not here speaking for that, but just,
and the county donated $450,000 towards the project.
yes, sir.
And in that process, was it discussed the name of the park, Veterans Tribute Park?
It had not been applied for at that time, is first thing I want you to know. And I will also tell you the city requires that you first have to show the ability to do that. They followed the process to the T. And I guess the question is, was it named the tribute park? I will say yes. Right from the beginning, the veterans want a veteran park.
But that was not discussed when the funding was being sought
Oh, absolutely. Oh, you mean at the county?
at the county level, county government level.
I'd have to go back and listen through the whole thing, but I would say that they were not funding the park. They were funding the Honor Mall area that is part of the trail.
Yes, the Honor Mall and the Veterans Tribute Trail are 2 recognizable namings of the area there. Those are in your proposals, and those were voted on by the county and the city. But when the county discussed the naming of the park Veterans Tribute Trail, what was the result of that? I'm sorry, it was voted down 18-8.
It was not voted down, it was postponed, is the terminology.
Indefinitely?
Well, indefinitely, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Done?
Any other
Any
questions?
questions?
Any other questions for Mr. Beckfield?
Thank you, I'm
I
sorry.
have a question.
Okay.
Talk about the naming. I like to address the part about you complain people say they were blindsided by the naming of the park.
I did not say
Wait.
that, yes, go ahead.
I heard the word blindsided. Anytime before March 27th of 2019, when you filed for the park name, was the word park used? Because looking back in this commission, city council, Eau Claire County, plan, and council again in 2017, 2018, and 2019, and in none of those minutes is the word Veterans Tribute Park listed, it's just trail. It wasn't until March of 2019 that that park was applied to it. Do you know any other public time in which you refer to it as a park and not just a trail, or is that the first time in March?
I can tell you, it's been called a park many
In
times.
public documents.
I haven't read every public document. The question is, did it need to? Let me ask you that question first.
Well, no, I'm asking the question.
Okay.
Kara. And I want to, same people were blindsided, kind of implied they weren't following the procedure, but as far as I could tell, it was never called a park before March of this year in official public documents. So I just want to clarify that. I think that might have been misconstrued.
Okay, let's just imagine it wasn't. Do you not have a policy to do that? Does it say in your policy that you need to call it a park prior to the application of the park, even if you're correct? That's my question to you. You have a policy that says the naming of a park goes through a policy. We had to go through and make sure everything was agreeable with everybody first.
All right, that's kind of separate. It's just that
No, it's not. It's
Yeah.
your policy.
I just want to clarify that it was not called a park in any public documents that I was able to research before March.
I would say yes. Okay, let's just
Well,
yep.
thank you.
Okay. I don't recall it, but I will tell you that it wouldn't matter. Because the city policy permits you to ask for that at any time, as long as you put it out there and you put in a 60-day waiting period, and we did that.
Sure, yeah, you're totally entitled to ask for the name. I agree with that. But you never mentioned in any other MOUs or presentations that it was a park. It was only a trail at that point. So people who say they didn't know about it Because it was never mentioned before that.
Sure, let's just say yes, but I'm going to tell you that that shouldn't matter with your policy that you put in place. I disagree with you. I believe we did. The media said we did. The advertising said Veteran Park.
Advertising and public documents are separate. But
I agree.
I accept the answer here. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm trying to honestly answer it too.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I want to be respectful, but I am passionate. Please understand.
I understand. Are there other questions for Mr. Beckfield from the commission?
I want to thank you all for your time and your consideration. That's good.
Okay. Just one moment. Sorry. So that concludes the presentation by staff and also by the applicant. At this point, we will open it to public input. Like I said before, there will be a 3-minute timer. Pat up here at the front corner will operate the timer. And please keep your comments. The business of the meeting tonight is the naming of the park. There's a lot of talk about the park itself, which we've gone over for the past 3 years now. So you know how the park's going to look. It's going to look wonderful. But it's the naming of the park is the topic tonight. And with that, I believe that first person that's ready. And then I don't know how we want to. Maybe, Jeff, you have a suggestion on how queuing might work for this?
Well, you don't really have room for a
I mean,
you could have them right over there.
yeah, there's some small area over here. Trying to fill it too much, kind of come up and get in line. Then once it kind of shortens up, if you want to speak, please come up the line, and we'll try to get everybody's comment in tonight. So, with that,
And I think I might rank a little bit above 3 minutes. I'm Tammy Schrottnagel. I am the county board supervisor for that area, as well as neighborhood association coordinator. I have been working diligently with Mark Beckfield and the veterans. I welcome and appreciate the exposure our area will have moving forward with inclusive, I know we hate the word, park that celebrates gardeners, bikers, rollerbladers, everybody in Eau Claire, and especially the veterans who both gave their time and sweat and their blood for Eau Claire and the world over the years. My father did not die in a war, but my father went on after his service to be a police person, police sergeant for 20 years on the Eau Claire Police Department. His name was Harris Wold, and I believe Mark is going to be allowing me to do a stone in honor of my dad and his service.
It's done.
I want to say that as far as the naming, at every single neighborhood association meeting, we had a YouTube video feed that fed us the presentation of the park, through the trail. Honestly, until that March 27th date, we had never heard of the park being Veterans Tribute Park. It was always in our understanding that it was going to be Forest Street Community Park and Veterans Tribute Trail. And I sent those kind of comments to staff, to you folks on the board, the city council, and I never heard a word with the words that I uttered in email saying, hey, Tammy, stop. You have to start doing this if you have something else you want to consider. None of the alternate ideas were shared with anyone except for city staff looking at alternate ideas and board members, because I know I sent out at least 4 or 5 iterations of what we should be calling it. Again, I welcome the park. I welcome the veterans. I welcome honoring folks in that little piece of green space that I believe Supervisor Buchanan and Andrew Worthman helped name the Forest Street Community Park several years ago, because the police wanted to have an identification when it came to figuring out who they could arrest and for what reasons. So yes, I was blindsided. I did not know anything other than Forest Street Community Park with the Veterans Tribute Trail.
And with that, I'm afraid the 3 minutes are up.
And I'm looking forward to working to move forward on this project. The neighbors would like some time to work with the city and the veterans to come up with something we could all love. Thank you, Times Square.
Please go to the front. And just a reminder, please state your name and address for the record before you speak.
Hi, my name is Jane Lindblad, and I live at 120 Gilbert Avenue. My name is Jane Lindblad, and I live at 120 Gilbert Avenue, Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I was adopted and raised here. This is my stomping ground. As a child, I went to Randall Park. Anyway, I am the commander of the Indian Head ex-POWs, prisoners of war, ranging from World War I, my dad's 95 and still alive, down to, we have several Vietnam veterans as well. I'm here to represent the group. My husband's a veteran. I have dear friends that are veterans. You know, as soon as I heard that this was going to be a Veterans Tribute Park, I sent the money in right away. My dad is a very humble man. I didn't even know he was a prisoner of war until I had my youngest son. I was 32 and I had never heard. I didn't know. These people don't talk about what happened to them. You know, he was a prisoner for a year and some months. He couldn't have kids. So he adopted us and gave us a beautiful life. And I think this is just a beautiful tribute for everybody, and I hope that it's made possible so that when my dad is still alive, hopefully I can bring him here and I can show him this. I just think it's a lovely thing, and I just hope it goes through, and thank you so much for your time.
Hello, and thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Barb Killen. I reside at 1957 St. Andrews Drive in Altoona. My father served in World War II and the wife of a veteran who retired after serving 31 years in the U.S. Army. And now our youngest, age 22, has been serving this country since age 17. The military service members who serve our nation are deeply deserving of our respect. Whether in times of war or peace, veterans and their families devote their lives to the service of our country and the ideals we hold dear. The sacrifices they make are without equal. During war, they put their lives at risk to protect the freedoms we often take for granted. They risk injury and death while their families back home must continue daily life without them, knowing and fearing that they could lose their loved ones. And myself and my family survived through 3 deployments, and we have my husband here. In today's military, more than half of the members are married, which means that when a deployment happens, like the pending deployment of Eau Claire 128th Infantry Battalion to Afghanistan this August, spouses are left behind to wait, worry, and try to help their children cope. It is important that as a community, we find ways to support our military and to educate future generations about the service provided by our veterans. A Veteran Tribute Park would not only do this, but it would enrich our community. I strongly support the naming of this park as the Veterans Tribute Park. Thank you.
Actually, to make it a little faster, one person can speak and there's an empty chair, but the next person could be in the chair. That way it could transition a little faster. So you can go ahead and, if you wouldn't mind going to the chair, and then ma'am, when they switch to going to the chair, it'll go a little faster.
Tell me when to switch.
sorry?
Tell me when the green light's on.
Right there.
My name's Lee Hennick. I live at 3150 Runway Avenue. I also happen to be the president of the Sundet Area Neighborhood Association and a veteran of the Army Reserves. And I did overseas service working for one of our government agencies in combat zones after my Army service. Veterans have long given much and asked little. They served in the hardest times. Our local reserve units go time and time and time again. My son's unit is going on his second tour in 4 years, his National Guard unit. We make up about 7% of the working population, yet we carry the load. A Veterans Tribute Park is aptly named to honor the veterans for their service and sacrifice. During Vietnam, people served in a very unpopular war, coming home to be spat on and disrespected. It's gotten better today, but the vets still do way more than their fair share, and they pay consequences for many years after that. I think it's time to let them rest in peace and give them an honorable name for a park. The veterans are paying the majority of the funds for this park, and they're being nitpicked to death by people who are not even contributing. I think it's time to let it go and let the veterans rest in peace with an honorable name, a simple Veterans Tribute Park.
Hi, Chuck Gable, 1132 Pershing Street, who also happens to be a vet, in case you didn't know. I'm here because I bought this paper, and I usually don't spend $1 to buy the Leader Telegram. But this headline and the quote from the city staff made me spend my lunch money. The gentleman who just spoke is a vet, and 2 things bother me. Number one, somebody's trying to start a fight, and there's no fight. Nobody has any problem with veterans. Nobody has any problem with non-veterans. That's right. What we have is a piece of property in Eau Claire that Andrew, Joe, a lot of other people for the last 10+ years had put in gardens and matched the $300,000 to do the pavilion that you had to spend extra. That the pavilion will last, hopefully, kind of as long as the Veterans Park. None of us care what you want, and Veterans Tribute Park is fine. We're just asking that you amend, or the city amend, to recognize that the community gardens and pavilion have been there and will be there with you. That's all we want to do. Thanks.
One more. Tom, you have a question?
So what are you saying? Are you in favor of the name, or are you?
Well, this gentleman covered the subject in such a way that I have no idea what's going on. But I heard somebody say that there is an amendment process to the name request of Veterans Tribute Park, and that could be amended to include the community gardens and pavilion. We spent $3,000 on signs that have been there over 10 years and are there 4 or 5 times a week. Do you want us to just burn our signs? What do you want us to do?
So you're in favor of an amendment?
Thank you.
I'm Joellen Burke. I live at 5600 Tower Drive in Eau Claire. I've lived here close to, louder? Yeah. I've lived here close to 40 years, sorry. And I'm a terrible gardener, and I'm not a veteran. I probably have no business being here other than just observationally having watched what has gone on in Forest Hill and Forest Park area. Having walked through that area on a regular basis with friends and having seen over the years how poorly attended that was until the gardeners came, and the group that has put up the pavilion has created a beautiful space for others. I don't get what, I'm used to controversy. I mean, I sometimes like controversy. I think there's a lot of reason for conflict in many issues. I don't get the reason for conflict here. It seems that it's about respect. I think it's about mutual respect. I've yet to talk to anyone that has an issue with veterans. My father was an Air Force veteran. We have, as a population, grown in our awareness and respect for what veterans have done for us and for our whole world. So I don't see this as something pitting anyone against veterans. I see it as people with good intentions trying to do the right thing, and it comes down to simple naming that creates an immaturity on all of our parts, where it seems a simple solution is about communication, where you get the two parties, whatever it involves, whoever it involves, and you get them to talk about something amicably and negotiating something that might be a mutually agreed upon and respectful naming that ultimately doesn't end with people harboring bad feelings for a garden or for veterans. It just seems silly that there's all of this consternation and anger and emotion when really, what about getting together and discussing things? And what I would propose with no knowledge and no expertise is a simple gathering of some of the veterans with some of the gardeners. It's happened once from what I understand. So it seems reasonable that instead of I'm gonna win or you're gonna win, what about a meeting? I hate meetings, but what about getting together? So, thank you.
Thank you for hearing our comments today. My name is Deirdre Jenkins, and I reside at 611 Fountain Street here in Eau Claire. I want to say first that my name is Deirdre, and I live here in Eau Claire. And I am from a family of veterans. My father was a Vietnam veteran. My grandfathers on both sides were veterans in the World War II. On my father's side, my great-grandfather was a veteran. My great-great-grandfather. My great-great-great-grandfather was a veteran. My great-great-great-great-grandfather fought in the American Revolution. And I know what veterans are. And I have a lot of gratitude for my family and for the sacrifices that have been made for our country. I am also a member of the Shared Garden here. I've lived in Eau Claire for 5 years, and I'm so delighted to be in a place that is so vibrant in terms of people contributing in the community. And to be a part of the garden has been a wonderful contribution for me to make to the community. We feed many people in the community through the community table. We donated over 750 pounds of produce last summer that we grew and gave to the community table, and I will bet that there were at least a couple of veterans who ate some of our food that we grew. When we heard that the veterans wanted to be our neighbors, I was delighted. I felt like that was a really natural fit, that somehow our gardens and a memorial would be very well suited for each other, much more so than many other combinations that could have come. And so personally, I have welcomed the opportunity to have the veterans as our neighbor here in the park. And in regards to the name of the park, I just want to say that I would like to present an alternate name for the park tonight, and that the Forest Street Special Area be named Forest Street Community Gardens and Veterans Tribute Park. That's all I have. Thank you. And I'm going to give it to you, Mr. Clippinger, since you brought it up.
I got a question.
I'm sorry,
So now you can't ask questions?
that's not the way the structure of the meeting is. The commission will ask the questions to the speakers. That's
I
just,
thought other people were asked questions.
from
I
the
guess
commission.
I'm just throwing this out. as to all this concern for the veterans. Why are the veterans always listed secondly? How come they're always in the back?
Okay,
John, that's
that's the way the,
Okay.
I understand your desire to ask a
Okay.
question, but I'm sorry, that's not the way the meeting is
Okay.
structured. If you would like to speak publicly and just kind of put it to the commission, feel free to do that. Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Joe Maurer, and I live in Eau Claire at 611 Fountain Street. I'm also part of the shared garden. I've been part of the garden since its founding, and I designed the pavilion that's down there. When you look at the building, you'll notice that it has half a roof. There was a reason for that. For one, it's a floodplain, and it was required by FEMA that the water pass through it. But another thing is it's symbolic that this park isn't done. This park is inviting other user groups. When I learned about the Veterans Trail, I thought, this is awesome. We need help down at the garden. Do any veterans here think that gardens are incompatible with a memorial? Because I have yet to talk to any that have. And I've also yet to talk to any gardeners that have said having veterans down here is incompatible. So I've seen, actually I didn't read it, but I heard in the papers and on the news that it's being portrayed as some kind of cultural warfare, and I'm sick of it. It's crap. We welcome you. The power of these gardens is I'm in there doing something with a shovel, right? And the people that wouldn't talk to me, like one couple just the other day said, hey, what are you doing? Well, I'm moving mulch aside. Well, why do you have all that mulch? Because I want compost in contact with the soil. I'm fertilizing the peppers. So I would ask you again, is there a reason that we've been here 10 years, we're down here to help people. There's a lot of senior citizens that work in the shared garden. It gives them something to do. To have veterans in there, I think would be an incredible, awesome asset. Yes, we're more informal than the design that has been proposed. But I think informal and formal can go together. Before I moved to Eau Claire, I lived in New York City, and I worked as a landscape architect, and I would work with architects, civil engineers, and structural engineers on many different public projects. I can completely appreciate that it's a pain in the ass to go to these meetings, pardon my language. It's a long process. But this red rectangle means something. This name means something. When you call it Veterans Tribute Park, it means that you're calling what we've been doing for 10 years Veterans Park. And we're not veterans. We're not. And when you tell stories about coming back from Vietnam and being spit on, that's horrible. Gardens are a healing place. Gardening can be a living memorial for living people. I understand that we're going to have people that have died that we need to respect. Part of the reason I left New York City is because I witnessed a murder on a train. The person who was holding the gun was from here to Mr. Pippinger, from me. I sat for 2 hours in the train station, traumatized. And when I left later, somebody asked me how long I'd been down there. I thought it was 10 minutes. When I came back to Eau Claire, I was involved in the gardens, but I knew I didn't want to be in the city, so I went to work on a dairy farm. Eventually moved back to the city, and for the last 6 years I've been involved in the gardens, and it has turned my anxiety from my PTSD into anger, but my anger has been used with a shovel. I would recommend that we coexist. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brandon Buchanan. I am a County Board Supervisor for District 27. I am speaking here today because I was one of the original people on the county board who supported the Veterans Tribute Trail and voted in favor of the almost $500,000 that the county allocated to this project. One of the things that really excited me about that project, in addition to the honoring of our veterans, was how respectful everyone was in working together. The neighborhood association supported the Veterans Tribute Trail. The garden community supported the Veterans Tribute Trail. Everyone sat down, talked to each other, worked together, and created a beautiful project that worked for everyone. Unfortunately, that has not happened in these last couple of months, which is why I am here to urge you to vote no on this renaming and give the neighborhood, the Veterans Foundation, and the Gardens an opportunity to continue that shared collaboration that had been here for a year and a half up until just these last couple of months. One of the things that we've heard is that this project has been well known for a long time, and that is 100% absolutely true. I emailed each of you a copy of the county board resolution where we voted to donate that almost $500,000. And as was kind of hinted at before with some of the questioning, that was always referred to as Veteran Tributes Trail. In not one public meeting, in not one public government document was the phrase Veterans Tribute Park used. Now, some will say that there's a formal naming process that we had to follow and we couldn't submit that name until X stage. But that's kind of a little bit of a, respectfully, a little bit of a bait and switch of an argument. Because when any developer comes before a city or a governing body, they will say the name of their project even before they get approval for their project. In all of these conversations that we have had today, there's a question that keeps popping in my head that I have not heard an answer for, and I'm hoping someone else can answer it. Because it's about respect. Why is it disrespectful? That's my question. Why is it disrespectful to pick up a phone and call someone who has been using a land for more than a decade and who will still be there when you enter in? Why is it inherently disrespectful to pick up the phone and say, hey, we would like to have this name. What do you think? I don't have an answer to that. I guess the big reason why this...
Can you please wrap up?
Okay. And that's pretty much all I really wanted to say is you have the notes, you have the government documents. It's important that everybody have an opportunity to work together. Every single thing the Veterans Foundation has asked for, they have gotten a yes and an approval for. Every single vote, every single thing prior to earlier this month. All we're asking is that we can continue that respectful dialogue so we can work for a name that everyone can appreciate. Thank you.
My name is Robert Andruskevich. I live at 1429 Drummond Street in Eau Claire. I just want to thank Patrick Buchanan for bringing up respect, because that's something I really believe in when it comes to public discourse. And I didn't see that with the first couple of speakers. So with that, so yes, I said I didn't see the respect being paid to the whole community with the first couple of speakers. And I just want to let you know that I support an amendment of some kind, and I support what Patrick just mentioned. Say no, and then work with us to create a name. So I just want to say that first. And I want us to be more inclusive so we're not being divided with our brothers and our veterans that are in that community. And I want to say that really clearly, because I have many friends that I consider brothers in this community that I've stood for publicly. One of those people is Lee Hennick, who spoke up here earlier. And another person would be Chuck Gable, who I work with in the community garden and other community types of projects. I lost my cell phone here because my battery died, so I'm trying to go by memory. So I want to state that I respect veterans so much that when a veteran came to my home when I was not home, and my wife and daughter were there, he was upset, and he was suffering from PTSD, is what we found out later on. He threatened my family, told my wife he had a gun, he could use it at any time. And I had to search for this man in the community to find out where he came from. And instead of calling the police on him, I spoke to him over the phone, and I let him know I would do anything to get him the services he needs so he doesn't hurt another community member. And what I hear in this room a lot is a lot of anger, a lot of loud voices, a lot of slamming, which is really unconscionable for people to do that. And I want to say the community garden respects and wants the veterans to be a part of the park, just like Tammy said. So in closing, I have one question. And there's a talk about the tallies of the people that emailed and said all these things. And then we also heard that there was an extension period for comments. What was the tally before the comment period? And what is, and how did that change? Is what I would ask the board to consider when looking at the final numbers. And in fact, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for your time.
I'm Mary Jackson. I live at 527 Maxon Street, Eau Claire. I just moved into town a few years ago, and I found out about the community gardens, which is close by where I live, and it has been such a blessing to be a part of this group. I don't know if many of you know, part of the gardens are rent your own plot, but a big part of it is a shared garden. And we work communally, we make our decisions, it's all democratic. I think that we should work together with the veterans in naming the park in a democratic way. I think we should reconsider the title and definitely keep Veterans Tribute Trail as part of it. But the park has been there for millennia, practically. And the homes that have been there before, they should be, there's no mention of a park or a home in Veterans Tribute Trail. So I wish that we could vote again and about the renaming of the park. And I have a suggestion of just Forest Street Park and Veterans Tribute Trail. And I think that would cover it all. And but I think it would be good if we could all work respectfully together and come up with a different name that would be inclusive of everyone that uses the park. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Laura Leffel. I live at W2369 Maple Road in Eau Claire. And I wasn't planning on speaking, but nobody brought up my issue, so I thought I'd get up here. And so I'm a veteran. My husband is a veteran. He served for 22 years. I've been in the veteran family for a long time. But since being out of the military family, we are farmers now. So I feel like I feel for the people who have put a lot of work and effort into their community gardens. That's what I do daily. But I also feel for the veterans as well. The thing that I wonder about now that we're online and everybody uses Google Maps and things like that, the thing that's important to me, other than remembering our veterans, is the educational component. I want children 10 years from now to want to go visit the Veterans Park. I want the teachers to say, hey, we're going to go on a field trip to Veterans Park. I want people to go into Eau Claire and look at Google Maps and see the Veterans Park. And if you have Forest Street Community Veterans Tribute Park, that's not going to be there. I mean, people aren't going to be able to focus on that. And I don't know what the answer is to help everybody. I don't know that everybody's going to be able to be happy with this. I want there to be a veterans park, and I want that to be the focus for children in the future. I want them to be able to go there. And I want people to visit from a long ways away and say, hey, there's a veterans park in Eau Claire. I've been to every veterans park in Wisconsin, but not that one, let's go there. But if it's named Forest Street, they're not going to know that it's a veterans park to go visit. So that was my new part, my new point. So, but thank you for listening, and I hope that there's a resolution.
parks, but my husband will have a stone in the park. I just wanted to tell you a few things about what makes a veteran. It's not the stones that we want to place there, it's not anything else, it's what they went through to be that veteran. My husband went to Vietnam as a 19-year-old skinny kid. He came home 99 years old and afraid of his own shadow. He passed away almost 8 years ago as a result of that war, because the country that said, oh, don't worry about Agent Orange, he needed to worry about it. He kissed me goodbye in the morning and he said, I'll see you tonight when I get home. Well, you know what? He didn't come home. Instead, an officer and a minister knocked on my door. And he had said to me, if anything happens to me in this war, it won't be a phone call. It will be an officer and a chaplain that will come. And I opened that door, and he said to me, I need to tell you something. And I said, no, I want to hear it. The man was 62 years old. He should be alive right now. He turned 70 in 4 days. But no, it took him. And so I have done everything in my power to honor veterans, not just Vietnam, that's where my passion lies, but all veterans. He was one of those veterans that returned home from Vietnam on an airplane and 2 soldiers were beaten to death in front of him because protesters thought it was wrong. And whether you believe in it or you don't believe in it, they didn't have a choice. They were sent there. So my thought is I would love to see it called like the Veteran Tribute Park, because I think that the community deserves it. And, thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Joe Heil, H-E-I-L. I live at 1231 Rose Street. I'm a resident of Eau Claire since 1979. I'm also chairman of the Eau Claire Veterans Council, where this project started many years ago. And at no time did any of the veterans that attended those meetings consider anything other than Veterans Tribute Park. I lost 2 good buddies over in Vietnam. I'm a Vietnam veteran. They were both corpsmen. They're not Wisconsin, one was Wisconsin resident, one wasn't. We need to honor not only Vietnam veterans, but all our veterans, both present, past, present, and future. In closing, I'd like to make the following statement to support the Veterans Tribute Park. Veterans are of all ages, come from all walks of life, but they all share the qualities of courage, dedication, and selfishness. In recognition of the service of all veterans, I strongly support a park named Veterans Tribute Park that is dedicated as a place where we can gather and honor and remember the lives and the stories of our Eau Claire great veterans. I also see it as a place where children will learn from their parents and grandparents the cost of freedom that we paid as veterans, the cost of freedom, to make sure that you all had the time to do what you wanted to do. And it makes me sad to know that it seems like the cost of freedom doesn't mean anything to some people. But it's also a place to acknowledge that those who have sacrificed so much for all of us. I have to disagree with the one lady commented about naming of the park. At no time did any of the veterans ever wanted anything other than the Veterans Tribute Park. It had nothing to do with the 4th Street Gardens Park or anything of that. I've been with this project since it started from the gentleman, Dennis Werlein. Some of you fellows know him. He's the one who started this. He passed away 2 years ago from Agent Orange. And believe me, he'd turn this over in his grave if we get anything but Veterans Tribute Park. Thank you for your time.
「
for those of you that do not know who a Gold Star mother is, I lost my son in Iraq. He was killed on December 1st, 2005. I was one of those people where come to my door and told me about my son. I'm also a veteran. I served 26 years active duty in the Army. My husband, Andy's stepdad, has served 38. So we have 74 years of military career in our family, just with the three of us. I'd like to read you a short statement also on the Veterans Tribute Park. Throughout history, our veterans have put their lives on hold at the risk to protect our country. When a war starts, many were afraid, but the veterans were afraid as well, but they answered the call of duty and rose up to fight for our nation. Many had to endure long hunger, loss, pain, desperation, but still they fought with a purpose, willing to give the ultimate sacrifice. Some are no longer with us. Some are now old and frail, suffering from wartime injuries. And others are just trying to fit back into society. It is important for us to acknowledge their service and display our gratitude as well as possibilities that they can take care of themselves and we can support them in any way. Veterans are the backbone of this country. Without them, there would be no United States of America, no life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and no way to ensure that our country will continue to be the land of opportunity. Veterans are about 1% of our communities who decide to take on enormous responsibilities by protecting America's values and promoting peace throughout the world. All veterans, past, present, and future, should be honored for their willingness to serve as citizens. We should never forget their sacrifices that we have made on behalf of all of you. It seems a park dedicated to the service of the Eau Claire County veterans should be named Veterans Tribute Park. I, for one, could not imagine any other more appropriate name for that park. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Angela Deutschlander. I reside at 4004 Clay Street here in Eau Claire. I am a member of the Board of Trustees for the Eau Claire Veterans Tribute Foundation. I'm a 27-year resident of Eau Claire, and I am also a veteran. I became involved in this project at its inception in 2015, before the foundation was established. We started as an exploratory committee of the Eau Claire County United Veterans Council, which consists of 14 local veteran service organizations. One of the first projects that came out of this council was a request from our veterans to create a tribute in Eau Claire. Myself and a group of four others set out to put the wheels in motion, and we specifically asked our community what they would like to see the tribute look like, as well as what they would not want it to be. The response was overwhelmingly positive, and our veterans and community alike said they want to see a restful, peaceful place that we can honor those that served. They did not want to see a place where weapons of war are glorified. They said, tell our stories of service, tell the stories of real people and their families, like the heartbreaking story that we just heard. We are fortunate enough that the city of Eau Claire sanctioned a piece of land along Forest Street to use for this specific purpose. We signed a memo of understanding with the city about how that would be used. From the beginning, we were fully aware and respectful of the fact that the garden group was there first, and with their own separate memo of understanding with the city. We have always viewed this as a green space with two separate groups coinciding, and have no intention of dictating what they should be called or how they should use their space. Since the start of the project, we have held countless public hearings for public opinion. We have happily agreed to concede to requests for changes to our design and meet the needs of our garden neighbors and community members. Having said that, please understand that this project is bigger than the land that it sits on. This is a legacy project that will benefit not only the city and downtown area, but the Veterans Foundation that started it. Our foundation is not just about a park. Once the project is completed, it will help us raise awareness for veteran causes like homelessness, PTSD, suicide prevention, and legacy programs that provide educational assistance. Building this tribute is our first order of business, as we know this will bring more awareness to these important issues facing our veterans. We respectfully ask for your support in helping us to uphold the integrity of this project. The responsibility that we have to our community of veterans, our sponsors, our supporters, and name the park what it was always planned to be, a Veterans Tribute Park. Thank you for your time.
Hi, my name is Brady Bouch. I live at 5825 Southern Way here in Eau Claire. I moved to Eau Claire about 6 years ago, a little more than 6 years ago, after completing more than 21 years in active duty. I'm a veteran of a couple conflicts. And I was surprised to find that Eau Claire had no place where they honored veterans. There was no place. So I was happy to see that this project got off the ground and the idea of Veterans Tribute Park was coming about. A place where the community could honor its veterans. Now, I'm not talking about those of us who are still alive. We're the lucky ones. I'm talking about those brothers and sisters who never made it back. Those are the true heroes. I'm not. These guys in here aren't. We made it back. They never did. It just, their sacrifice was because they loved freedom. They adored freedom. I know some of them who never made it back. They were fighting for freedom. Was their sacrifice, is the name Forest Lake that big of a deal that you would dishonor their memory? That you would dishonor their, is it that big of a sacrifice to forego that name in order to have Veterans Tribute Park to honor those who fell, to protect your freedoms? I don't understand it. It's a name. You're keeping your gardens. Honor those guys who fell. Honor my brothers and sisters who I watched die. They didn't ask for anything. They went voluntarily. They were never drafted. They went voluntarily. It's a small thing compared to what they did. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
My name is Leon Solander from Eau Claire. I was reading the article in the paper the other day, and it had a big picture in there with an archway on it that said Veterans Tribute Park. And I looked at that and something's wrong. I did not like that. I did something. It finally hit me. The old man, it takes a while to hit things. I did not like the word park. I don't believe we should have a park, a Veterans Tribute Park. We should have a Veterans Tribute. It's a tribute. We have Carson Park, we have Owen Park, we have McDonough Park, Putnam Park, all because of people that donated the land. This land is the city's land. It's being developed. And it's being developed by you and me, isn't it? So each one of our names should be up there, park. Hey, yeah. No. It'll be very park-like, but I think we should think of it, I'd like to think of it more as a retreat, a place where you go probably to be a little quiet, to think about things, of course, to think about all of those veterans, the ones we knew especially, but we still have to remember all of those that we didn't know, because we owe a lot to them just as much as we owe it to the ones that we knew. So my simple suggestion is that we call that park, if we call it, is that we do not call it any kind of a park, that we call it Veterans Tribute. Thank you.
I'm Bonnie Ackley. I'm not from even Eau Claire County. However, as an observer of this, everybody's talking emotionally. Emotionally for the gardens, emotionally for the veterans. Well, I believe these are city council people here sitting with name tags in front of them, right?
Commission, Waterways and Parks Commission, and from this meeting, it will then go to City Council.
Okay, so everybody here is supposed to uphold the laws, the rules, the regulations. The veterans group followed the rules. They followed the regulations. They did what they were supposed to do. I see the gardeners, I see their commitment, I see all of that. However, they had a chance to make their excuses and reasons for everything known during the 60 days. The public comments, that's rules and regulations. That's following the law. And I think that's what this city council and these representatives should do. That is the oath that you guys took.
The gentleman that spoke here last, I like his ideas. But now, you see the great big red line around here, and here's this fairly small area.
I'm sorry, could you just say your name and your address for the record so we know who you are?
Patrick Moore. I live in Augusta, which is part of Eau Claire County. I do business here in Eau Claire a lot.
Okay, thank you.
It's Veterans Tribute or Veterans Tribute Park Trail. I really don't care about that. What I do care about is they want to have the garden first. You wouldn't have your garden if it weren't for veterans. You might not even be alive if it wasn't for veterans. And to have as many veterans as you could possibly get milling around your garden is going to protect your garden. I myself would end up in the hospital. I'm trying to make up for those I could never hear back there. I could end up in the hospital protecting your garden and not even know who you are. I did it. I went halfway around the world. 50 years ago right now, I was walking around Vietnam on my senior class trip still looking for a McDonald's. And that was to protect people I couldn't even sit down at a table with and have a conversation. You think I wouldn't do it for you? Other than your stupid sign out here on the door, I would have a gun here. Not only for my protection, it would be for the protection of everybody in this room and the next person that drives down Forest Street. Thank you.
We have two more speakers in line, and we've heard a lot of opinions, and unless you have something new to contribute, I think we've heard about all the opinions, and it's getting kind of late, so I mean, we're not going to stop anyone from speaking about it unless you got something totally new. We want to try to kind of wrap this up, so just keep that in mind, please.
Hi,
Hi, I'm Carrie Kernan, and I live at 1012 Chauncey Street, and I've been involved with the garden since the beginning, and over the years, and hundreds of meetings, and interactions with city staff, and lots of groups, not to mention Boys and Girls Club. We helped middle schoolers learn job skills with selling vegetables at the market. We worked with UW Extension to work with low-income folks to teach them how to eat and use vegetables so that when they get assistance, they use it wisely. We've worked with people with disabilities. We had some raised garden beds so that kids could have a chance to garden who normally can't even get down on the ground and garden. We've worked with people from the YMCA youth there. Thousands of food to the community table. I could go on and on. I've lost track of how many groups we've worked with over the years, but like, we love this. We love working with groups. I have so much honor and gratitude that this many people are excited about that space because I've spent years toiling there and trying to get people excited to come down there, to share this space with us. Like, that's what it's all about. It makes me really sad to feel like veterans and their families feel attacked or not appreciated. I hope you don't walk away feeling that way, and I hope every time you come to the garden, you feel respect and you feel like you are welcome there. And I was really excited when I first learned that we'd be working with the veterans because the gardens are very healing. I am also a herbalist, and I work with people. I make them things, and I work with all sorts of people that have been through a lot. And one of the things that I help them do is to work with plants and also for myself. So I spend countless hours in silence thinking about things, and I can only imagine that space being used for people to reflect. I think it works great. So I don't like feeling like I'm kind of being bullied to even speak up and ask for, like, could we maybe think of another way to frame how we're going to name this space? Because, that's what we've been told for years and years. Like, we have to share this space. We have to work with others. It's not ours. Like, that's what we've been holding this whole time. And it doesn't feel good to have a user group come in and just tell us sorry, too bad, you're not important. So I don't know what that is, but I hope that no one walks away with a misunderstanding, feeling like they aren't appreciated, because that's not the case. And it would be an honor to have the memorials there for the veterans. And I don't have another option for naming, but right now the feeling, it doesn't feel very good, and it feels like we're being bullied. So that's all I wanted to say. So thank you, everybody.
Good evening. My name is John Arnett. I'm a Vietnam Air vet, retired from the City of Eau Claire Police Department, and I've truly enjoyed this community. And what I'm going to speak here and repeat, many of the veterans have already heard this. It's referring to POWs, MIAs. And the gist of this is remembering. Many of these points have already been addressed by many of the veterans in here. But one thing that you want to remember is the sacrifices that have been made. And it goes like this. Ladies and gentlemen, for all those who have served and those currently serving our great nation, are ever mindful that the sweetness of enduring peace has always been tainted by the bitterness of personal sacrifice. We are compelled to never forget that while we enjoy our daily pleasures, there are others who have endured and may still be enduring the agonies of pain, deprivation, and imprisonment. You may note a small table. Now this, again, for the veterans, you know what I'm talking about. This is during celebratory celebrations. There's a small table set up. It's in honor. It is set for one. This table is our way of symbolizing the act that members of our profession of arms who are missing from our midst. They're commonly called POWs, MIAs. We call them brothers and sisters. They are unable to be with us this evening, and so we remember them. The table is round to show our everlasting concern for our missing men and women. Remember, this table set is small. It symbolizes the fertility of one person, or excuse me, one prisoner against his oppressors. Remember, the tablecloth is white. It symbolizes the purity of their intentions to respond to their country's call to arms. Remember, the single rose displayed in a vase reminds us of the families and loved ones of our comrades in arms who keep faith, awaiting their return. Remember, the red ribbon tied so prominently on the vase is reminiscent of the red ribbon worn on the lapel in the breasts of thousands who bear witness to their unyielding determination to demand a proper accounting for our missing. Remember, a slice of lemon. That's an awful quick 3 minutes. So I'm going to ask Joshua, please give me another minute or so.
Go ahead.
A slice of lemon placed on the plate is to remind us of their bitter fate. Remember, salt is sprinkled upon the plate, symbolic of the family's tears as they await. Remember, the Bible represents the strength gained through faith to sustain those lost from our country. Founded as one nation under God. Remember, the glass is inverted. They cannot toast with us tonight. Remember, the candle is reminiscent of the light of hope, which lives in our hearts to illuminate their way home, away from their captors, to the open arms of a grateful nation. Remember, the chair is empty, they are not here. Remember. Thank you.
Well, I never thought I'd come up here to my naming. But I'd like to ask, especially the gardeners. I know they worked hard, and I'll give you all that there. But I've never seen a garden once shoot back. Not once. But I sure heard a lot about the vets and how they got shot back. So that name the vet. My God, they're paying all that money. And can you imagine? Just think of the revenue that we're going to get in Eau Claire. They said you gave 700 pounds to the food center. Look how much money we're going to get and give to everybody. So for people to talk about the vets and the name is unthinkable. It should be called the Veterans. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public? Go ahead. Thank you.
My name is Mike Korger. I'm president of the Vietnam Veterans of America, Chapter 5, Eau Claire. I am commander of the American Legion Post 291 at Augusta. After listening to the many speakers, I'm wondering if it isn't possible that this should be called the Veterans Tribute Park and have signage there for the 4th Street Gardens. I don't understand why that has to be part of the park stand. Why can't we have the signage there for the gardens? So that's my proposal. compromise. Thank you.
Unless there's anyone who has something new to contribute to the conversation tonight, we'll close the public comment period. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak? If not, I thank everybody for their comments tonight. At this point, we've heard the presentation, the applicant, and members of the public. Is there any discussion among the committee? Oh. Well,
before you go into discussion, you need to get a mover so you can go into discussion. So someone's got to have a motion to move the.
Okay. Okay. In order to move the discussion, we must discuss the motion. So, at this point, just to move the meeting, there would be open a motion to recommend the naming of the Forestry Special Areas Veterans Tribute Park. Is there a motion to that?
I'll move that, Josh.
Ron moves it. Is there a second to the motion? And Tom. Does the commission have any discussion relevant to the motion? Kate?
Would it be okay if I ask a question with staff?
Yes.
Late,
Yes.
sorry.
You may ask questions of staff.
So there's a couple of quick questions. What is the process of what happens if this motion were to fail?
It would go to the city council as a negative. So the recommendation would be failed.
And if there was an interest in coming back to the table to find a solution or a name that is favorable to both groups, how would that happen?
There's a few things that you can do. And I did contact the city attorney on this to get some clarification. There is the ability for the commission to amend with a different name. But you would still have to move this motion at the same time. You have to go through the affirmative amendment. But you could recommend an amendment to the commission. If you're talking about going back for the groups, that would have to be something that would be done afterwards, depending upon how this vote goes.
And what would that process look like?
It would be the same process that we went through. Again, it would be a submittal of the name to the Community Services Department. We would review it based upon the merit, and then it would come back to the commission for another 60-day comment period.
That's one more question.
Yes, go ahead.
I know that we had something like 150 comments that came in with opinions about the naming. How and where did those comments come from?
They came from the public. It went out as a notice from Community Services, and also we used social media to get that message out. Are you asking about the percentages?
Yeah.
So-
I'm interested in that too.
So-
What's the volume again here? Questions and answers, we're not getting any either.
Unfortunately, we don't have a microphone, so members, do please speak a little louder so the public can hear you.
So
I'm going to give up my chair for some reason.
we collected the comments from the public for the 60-day period. Those comments were compiled and then determined which were pro, what were against, and then we had a section that were other because it really wasn't clear whether they were for or against the name. So we put them in other. The ones that were pro and against, those were affirmative. We knew what they were suggesting. 179 were for the name change, 17 were against, and 10 were other. Basically, it came out as 87% were in favor of the name change, 8% were against the name change and 5% were other. That we just didn't, we couldn't go either way with it.
And did you work with either of these groups, the forestry group, garden group, or the veterans group to work with promotion of the survey or anything like that?
That's not how the process goes. The Veterans Foundation submitted a request through a written letter to the Community Services Department. We looked at the criteria and the qualification of the name. It was all reasonable and appropriate. It was then brought to the Waterways and Parks Commission during the March meeting, and at that point it was moved to the next phase of the 60-day public comment period.
And was the garden or the neighborhood notified of this process?
I am not sure about that. That wasn't my purpose on that. I got the request from the group that had submitted it, that was putting in the investment into the park.
Thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Kirk, I believe you had a next.
Yeah, so I'm just troubled by the tone of some of the discussion here. It seems to kind of imply that maybe the rules weren't followed in the naming, the procedure, and I've got in front of me here the Eau Claire Parks policies and procedures, and it says the Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Department will solicit suggested names from the community by advertising, such as in the Leader Telegram, etc. Working in cooperation with the Parks Department, individuals, groups, and organizations interested in proposing a name for a new unnamed park area or facility must do so in writing. This policy will allow for a, quote, name the park, unquote, contest to be held through various means, provided prior approval from this commission. So are we able to look ourselves in the eye and say we really followed the tone of this policy?
Yes, you're citing new parks that are coming on. This isn't, we didn't classify this as a new park. It was a green space that had been in place since the city bought the property back in the late 90s, early 2000s. At that point, that's where it became a green space. And then we classified it as a special area based upon the amenities that were in the green space. So that there's two different parts of that policy. A naming policy of a park that's unnamed, a naming policy for a new park, and then the naming policy if it's already named, which have different processes that we follow.
So even though it isn't really called a park now, we're saying it's not a new park.
Correct.
And is there a reason why we need to name it like real soon, like, in the next few months, or doesn't it matter? During the construction and building, does it have to have a name?
As far as the city is concerned, no. I mean, the request came in following the process we have, and that's what's before the commission today.
Susan?
I am very familiar with Eau Claire Parks that have other entities within them that have their own names. The park is not named after them, and yet they still go through a process so that they are known under their own name and their location is the park. I felt like at the end of all this, reading all of these things and hearing all the comments, that the veterans group had gone through the process that we've outlined, that it's not that there wasn't opposition, there were definitely people who felt differently, but there's a very large majority that favor the name Veterans Tribute Park. I feel like we have to recommend to the council, we have to tell them that this was the outcome. But I would like to make some sort of an amendment that would note that there was a lot of controversy, there was concerned that there hadn't been enough discussion between the two major groups involved. I personally think that there would be a number of things the city could do to help the gardens maintain their identity within this large project it's surrounding them. It's going to be a very spectacular project, and I can see where they would begin to feel overshadowed by this new and spectacular project. I think we could do it with clear signage, separating barriers that go around that can help define what's the garden. The garden is a large part of this area. And that the signs that come into the park could also, they can say, here's what's in this park. And also, there can be wayfinding so people can find the gardens and so forth. So there would be a lot of things that could be done to make sure that people understand that the community gardens are within this park. But I feel as though we can't ignore the vote. Now, if the council would like to say, we'd like to try again, I think we have to respond to the veterans' proposal. And then if that doesn't, because we don't really get to say in the end whether or not it's approved, we're recommending it on to the council. So I think we can make suggestions in the form of a modification, but I think we have to go either up or down on what's before us.
Tom?
So, question for Jeff. How many community gardens are in our state?
We have several. We've got the one at 4th Street. We got the Fairfax Community Gardens. There's one at Bimler, I believe. We have 4 or 5.
So there's several.
And we've had several that have been, and they aren't anymore because there's been some interest.
So are any of them, where they're located, are they noted in the name of the area? In other words, if they're in parks, are the community gardens noted in the park's name?
No.
Yeah, I can't think of any, I just want to clarify. And so we have this great area, and we have these two great groups. And I feel really unfortunate that they've been pitted against each other. It's for the gardeners or the tribute people, they should walk out of here and say, we're doing great things in yard. But I agree with Susan that we may be setting a precedent if we think that we should be naming this area with the gardens noted in the name. And I think I agree with Susan, the fact that there seems to be an overwhelming majority to support the tribute park name. But we should meet with the garden people and say what needs to happen to give you proper recognition and proper stature within this area. And I like the last comment, compromise. That we get an opportunity to listen to these people and say, what is it that you need to make you feel comfortable and feel valued in this area? But I do support the fact that just because of the overwhelming majority and the money that's been raised and the following the policy, that we should go with tribute park.
Jenny?
So a couple of things just really strike me, and one of the things that it's just really confusing to me, and I'm unsure how this could have possibly happened, is this us against them stance. I don't see this issue as an us against them issue. I think it's, as has been said, two great groups that are doing great things. Because we have a policy to follow, those who contributed financially in the form of donations, cash, have the right to request the name of the park. Those who have been laboring on this land for the past decade also have a right, and they've also contributed. It's just a different kind of currency.
There has been financial contribution from the garden, over $100,000.
Don, do you see your
Thank
part
you.
later?
It's not $2 million roughly that the gardeners themselves have donated. So they did not request to name the park. What we have before us is the Veterans Organization requesting to name this park. And because of the policies we have in place, we do need to follow that. But what I see is, and what I hear is that it's us against them, and then there's gotta be some sort of compromise. I don't think there's gotta be a compromise. I think there is a win-win solution to this issue. And I think that some additional communication could pave the way for that solution. I'm gonna vote no on the naming of the park, the Veterans Tribute Park, only because I think there is an opportunity for all parties to win in this situation. You know, I look back at our minutes and our notes, it was called the Veterans Tribute Trail in Forest Park, or Forest Park Veterans Tribute Trail, until March. So it was always a trail in my mind through the Forest Street Community Gardens. So, you know, I don't see that anyone's wrong here. I don't necessarily either see anyone's right here. I think there's a win-win solution that requires some more communication, and that's why I'll vote no.
Don, do you want to follow
I
up?
do. I don't want to continue that same argument, but I wanted to say that there's a lot of people that use this park. There's the community gardeners, there's the neighbors who go down there to walk dogs or play with kids. There's bikers that come through there riding along the river, walkers out for their exercise. Residents who live nearby, residents of the past. There used to be houses there, and one of those residents is here at the table with us tonight. And of all those groups, well, now we have a new group to the park, and that's the veterans. And there's no doubt that we want to pay tribute to the veterans because we've already approved a Veterans Tribute Trail and Honor Mall. And of all those groups that I just named, only one of them is represented in the name of the park. And so for that reason, I think it's an exclusive name and not an inclusive name. They've gotten a lot of support. They got support from the county and finance. They got support from the city and land and a maintenance agreement. They got support from the community gardeners and the neighborhood. All the time garnering that support, the words Veteran Tribute Park was never mentioned. And now that all that support is in place, now they're mentioning the name. And that kind of opens the door to the veterans saying, hey, if there's a conflict, we're the veterans and this is Veterans Park. And we've already seen the slamming of the stone, and so we know intimidation looks like. I'm sorry you missed that, Ms. B. So I would like to say at this time, I would vote no, and perhaps postpone it until we are further along with the project and the development is visual, that we can see, and the conflicts of the building have been worked out, and then we can look at revisit the naming of the park.
Thank you. I guess I first want to say that I'm really grateful to have learned throughout these last few years about the lack of memorialization that we have for veterans in Eau Claire. That was something that Mr. Beckfield taught me a while ago, that Eau Claire is a large city not to have a veterans memorial, and I want to say I'm really grateful to those in this room and others who have put in the time and money to correct that, and I'm grateful that we're going to be having a memorial for veterans in the near future. And I also wanted to say that I, having been a member of this neighborhood, I lived a block away from this park, and I had the opportunity to speak with the local police actually, and they told me the history of my neighborhood and the struggles that this neighborhood has gone through with crime and other social issues, and the police told me directly that this park had a direct impact on revitalizing this neighborhood in a way that didn't displace anybody. This neighborhood still houses people who are of low income, who are maybe struggling with abuse or something else, and they can live there and live there really peacefully, and we know that that's in part due to the work that that gardeners have put in and countless other people have put into this green space. And I think that work is also important, as also important to kind of add to the importance of memorializing our veterans. And so that's not something that I want to erase. I think that, so I will also be voting no. I think that the fact that the survey revealed what it did does not require us to do anything. If it did, then we wouldn't need to exist as a commission. We're a policy-making committee, and if we automatically had to send it over to the council, then it wouldn't need to go through us anyway. So it's absolutely okay if others want to vote no here too, in my opinion. I think the biggest thing for me though is that in my time in public service, one of the biggest things that I've ever learned is that when we have two groups at such odds, it means that we're not there yet. And so I'm really interested in allowing this conversation to continue so that we can find a more common understanding, and so that we can find the solution that works for everyone. The history of gardening and our armed services is actually something that's really inspired me for a long time. I started investing in our community, in our food systems, and victory gardens really inspired me, and I think that that's something that we can learn from. I'll say that I hope that both groups come to the table cooperatively. I haven't seen cooperation happen. There was an email that was sent around by Mr. Beckfield that said that this is going to be an all-out war if we didn't approve this, and I really hope that cooperation is improved and taken seriously, because there are strong emotions on both sides here. And so I think that it's up to us to allow that conversation to continue cooperatively.
John?
After I will get back. My dad also served during the Vietnam War, so I know how important that we need to recognize, all the services that we have. But tonight, since I listened to both sides, and I think that I will be also voting no tonight. But I will not just say no, will not be. But I will no to have both sides working together, come to the table together. Since I listened to both sides, seems like we don't have good communication. 5 meetings, neighborhood association meetings, but seem to be like one side did not hear the other side talking. So I want to vote no tonight, but I want to have both groups come on to the table, working together, find solution, the name that both need. That's what I will be voting no tonight.
Any other member of the commission wish to speak to this? I will speak as a member of the commission, and echoing Kate and Jenny. Right now we have 2 excellent members of the community. I want to see them both there for many years to come. I look very forward to the tribute trail, and I love the community garden and the 10 years of hard work they put in there. And right now these 2 groups don't agree. And if we make a decision, we're going to have a winner and we're going to have a loser. But what we do have is time. And with time and talking, we can have 2 winners. So there's no rush to name this park. I want the 2 groups to come together and reach a name that works for everybody. I want to have that name there, and I want to have the trail, and I want to have the garden. So we have time, and there's no reason to make anybody a loser tonight. So that's my opinion on the matter. So does anyone else wish to speak to this matter?
This
just a little tiny point of information that might happen. When I was reading all the comments that had come in, I noticed that amongst the pro group, that had been organized with all the yeses together, 11 of the people had actually said they were asking for the name Veterans Park, not the name as it was stated. When I began to notice this, I was concerned about it because I wondered if it would change how disproportionate the yeses were. They don't, but it's still a significant minority. And then it's a little bit complicated by the fact that we actually already have a park named Veterans Park. If we give it a real long name, we might get everybody represented, but people tend to not use a real long name. So you probably end up with people calling it Veterans Park, because they circumvent your attempts to get everything in. Those are just notes.
Is there any more discussion? I believe Kirk and then Tom.
Yeah, on that point, people call it the Pablo. They don't say Pablo Center at the conference. They just call it the Pablo. But I just want to say it's just an awesome site. And we're going to end up, no matter how we name it, we're just an awesome park there. I'm just not in any big hurry, I guess, and I'm not sure how much smarter we're going to be in a few months or whenever this comes back. I support the veterans. I came here prepared to vote in favor of the Veterans Tribute Park. I like the gardens, what they've done there. I'm totally in favor of having the sign there, have the pavilion, have the gardens. Lots of parks have subsets in them that have nice signs. There's no problem with that. But I do favor the Veterans Tribute Park, but on the theory that maybe we can come together, have a more harmonious and happy outcome with this. If it takes a no vote to postpone it and work toward that better agreement, then I'd be prepared to vote no.
Tom?
Well, so when we name a park, that name sticks with the area for a long time. Carson Park was named a long time ago. Owen Park, I'm assuming, was our first park, I believe. We've not changed the name. I'm all for discussion. I'm all for further dialogue. I do certainly support veterans and their efforts. But the one thing that I would not support is having the gardens be part of the name. Are we willing to say 20 years from now there's going to be gardens there? Are we willing to say 50 years there's going to be gardens there? I don't know. And for us to develop a name that has gardens in it, community gardens, I think is great for right now. But we're not naming a park for just right now. We're naming a park to name a park, or we're thinking for a long time. So that's why I'm very supportive of the gardens. And the other part of me that says a veterans tribute, I'd like to think will be there forever. I know forever is a very long time, but I would like to think that the enthusiasm for that will never diminish. And so to put a label on that space within our town to say that that's where we honor veterans will increase the chances of that continuing for generations to come. Even though it may not be perfect, and I'm the first to say that this isn't perfect, I can support the Veterans Tribute Park, and with the idea that we're going to talk with the garden people and really have them feel good about efforts to recognize the area. So that would be my first support. But secondly, if it appears that motion is going to be defeated, if we're going to come back with a recommendation, I would not support having community gardens be part of the name.
Kate?
I guess so my interpretation of what we've heard is that the gardeners really want to just be a part of this process and want to have the chance to be able to be recognized for the work that they're doing, but maybe not so much as naming the park like literally with the word garden. That's my impression of what happened tonight, and I think that there is a name that exists that doesn't include garden and that both people can be happy with. And I think that in order to do that, though, both of the groups need to talk, and which is why I'm voting no, like I said.
Ron?
I made the motion to move this forward because for several reasons. One, the Forestry Community Garden community have had 10, 12 years to provide an option for a name for that greenway space and has not come up with it at that time. This group behind us here spent 2 years working hard to establish a park in our community that will recognize the service that the veterans have provided to us. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that service. Second thing is, I think combining the name that Veterans Tribute Park is an opportunity for us in Eau Claire to be forward-thinking about what can be a special place within our city and within our community that people are going to come to, particularly the kids in this community, have a chance to learn about the history of the U.S. and the wars that we've been involved with, so that at some point maybe we won't have to have wars in the future. But we still recognize the service that these guys have provided and these women have provided. So I think that naming it Veterans Tribute Park is something that is forward-thinking for the city of Eau Claire, forward-thinking for the community that lives in this forestry area, an opportunity for us to make a statement. That's all I want to say.
Speaking as a member of the commission against Ron, just because the garden never requested a name, they never had a need to. It was always this Forest Street Park, and they became the Forest Street Community Garden. And it could be very well in the future that we have a Veteran Tribute Park, and then they are the community gardens at Veteran Tribute Park. It's just that they were not allowed to have a say. And if this were to come up in the future after everyone's talked about it and the exact same name came up and both parties were in agreement, I would vote for it right away. But I just think they need the time to have the input and to both groups here to be in agreement and not be against each other as they are tonight. And there's no rush, so I would like to see that have a chance to play out. Even if the same name came back and honoring the veterans, that'd be perfectly fine in the future, I think. Tom?
Just one more issue, and possibly an amendment to the motion would be that we would ask for dialogue with the community garden people as part of the passage of the motion. There's a little bit of me that feels by supporting this that we've allowed some bully behavior to win the war. And I felt a little bullied tonight, and I'm not feeling real good about it. And I'd like to see us have a little more dialogue. But I also feel in the long, when all that smoke clears and all that goes away and this little short-term feeling in your mind goes away, that we're going to be better to have the tribute park title. But could we amend the motion to require some type of discussion with the garden people? And what would it take for that to happen?
The maker of the motion would have to approve that.
Except if we put it down.
Well, if you vote it down, then it's, yeah.
Jenny?
So, let me first say my husband is a veteran. So we're just clear about that. We are not ready at this point to have very conflicted groups come together and be happy about and support and love and be a part of this garden. So I don't think we're ready. There is no pressure. I think we need to have some more discussion about how everyone can be included in the naming of this park. You know, as I listen to folks again and again, I don't think the problem is veterans against gardeners. I think it's simply that the name Veterans Tribute Park did not come up on paper clearly until March. So I don't think we're ready to say yes and send this forward to the city council.
Any other commission has something new to contribute to this conversation? If not,
I have a procedural question.
proceed.
So the motion is on the floor.
Motion's currently
on the table.
Yes, and there's no second.
And what I was going to do was to add was to offer an amendment that would ask for meetings with the Gardner group to establish what would make them feel recognized within the group. But I feel like from the way the discussion is going, it's not going to probably win, I don't know yet. So is it not make sense
Just
to offer other motions?
is there a way to recommend something to council along with this item, even if it was officially voted no?
Yes, you can do an amendment with a recommendation coming from the Waterways and Parks Commission.
Because Susan,
And that could be part of the
vote
recommendation to approve, whether it's in the affirmative or the negative.
Susan, would you like to make an amendment?
Another option would be to vote down the motion, and then depending on the outcome of the motion, you could have another motion that would direct something like what you're talking about, that the groups try to get together.
All right, let's keep it clean and have one vote on the current item. The current motion on the floor is recommendation to approve naming the forestry special area to Veterans Tribute Park. I will take a vote by a show of hands.
Just a point of order, so
Yes, Kirk.
I might be inclined to vote no unless an amendment comes along of the type that I'm interested in, and then I'd be inclined to vote yes. So how do I proceed?
Well, I think Pat just said we will vote on the current motion and then we can pass some sort of amendment or recommendation.
Have a second motion then.
Okay, well, then we'll have a second motion, perhaps what Susan was pertaining to. So currently, it's just a clean vote on the movement at hand. And we'll take a vote by show of hands, please. So all those in favor of the recommendation, please raise your hand. 3. All those opposed to the recommendation? 6. So this motion fails 3-6. Is there an amendment to pass one?
We should have 10 people here.
Maybe I didn't count.
You didn't count yourself.
Maybe I didn't count myself, so please make that 7. Susan, would you like to, or Kirk,
Okay.
would anybody like to
I'd
propose
be
something?
happy to. So I move that we name the park the Veterans Tribute Park, and that we amend the recommendation of City Council to state that we'd like to be sure to highlight or emphasize that the garden area be called the Community Garden at Veterans Tribute Park.
Well, we just voted down this item, and you're just bringing it back up again.
I thought that's what I just asked, that if
I think it would be a separate motion that we pass on to City Council that we recommend. Well, Susan's amendment was more about dialogue between the groups in the future.
Okay.
We could make a motion that we encourage the city council to encourage the two groups or interested parties into reaching a common ground through discussion.
Kirk is expanding, we voted on a very clean motion, but it needed an expansion. And it just seems to me that you should be able to, with that caveat, that we should be able to make a motion. Pat, what do you think? Got an opinion on that? Are you a parliamentarian here?
We would just like City Council to recommend that there's dialogue between these two communities when the next naming would come along, I believe. Kate, do you have a comment?
So I think that there might have been a miscommunication on the parliamentary procedure. Do you want to?
Yes, what we should have was that there should have been a motion for an amendment, I believe, how we do it in City Council. And then work your way back to the original recommendation. So now that we've already voted on the original, it's hard to go back and make an amendment that you could work through and then work back.
My impression of the commission discussion was to try to encourage further communication and cooperation. That really wasn't part of suggesting another name.
It wasn't a name. So
It's another process.
We could still add that on as part of the recommendation from the Waterways and Parks Commission, if that's what I'm hearing, is that the commission's looking for some more dialogue between the veterans group and the garden group to perhaps come up with another naming option.
Pat, the nature of the conversation tonight is going to be in the minutes made available to the City Council. So they will know that we had a long discussion about cooperation between these two groups for a future name.
Correct. But if you want to go on record that recommending that the two groups get together, you certainly could do a motion to recommend
A separate motion.
Susan?
I think it would be important for us to be formal because the decision, the indecision about the current motion is going to come in the City Council. So I think we should have a motion that I move that the naming process start over with further discussion between the two main parties involved in the park and to work to get appropriate recognition for all sides, not necessarily, through naming, but through various means. Is that a motion?
Pat, I would take any suggestion you have on how to proceed at this point.
That's a legitimate motion.
Is there a second to Susan's motion?
I would like to revise that to not say the two main parties, but say interested parties.
All interested parties?
Okay. All right.
Susan, do you accept that
Yes.
change? Okay, so did you see that one more time for Pat's records?
Probably not. That's
In any way you like to.
I move that the naming process start over, that all interested parties come together to discuss what would be an appropriate name and other methods of clarifying the participants in the park.
Is there
Want to read that back to us?
Said interested parties.
Is there a second to that motion? Kate? All those in favor of that? Okay, thank you. Kat, since we have a motion and a second, can you read that back for a vote?
The motion was to move that the process start over, and that interested parties in the special area get together to discuss a possible name for the park.
Sorry, the motion is about a recommendation, right?
Pardon me?
The motion is about a recommendation.
The recommendation.
Okay, we're leaving off parts of my motion, but it's probably in the interest moving forward.
Susan moved, Kate seconded. All those in favor of this motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
So, a procedural question. So because we maybe made a procedural error that you alluded
too, Jeff? Is there a way to backpedal this or procedural error?
I think we're fine right now. If the commission is in agreement with the new motion, I think we're fine.
What was the vote on that?
It was 9-1.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Can I just clarify?
Yes, Kate?
So I think that the motion that we just passed is unrelated to the naming, well, it is related, but it's not tied to naming the park the Veterans Tribute Park. It's a recommendation to send to City Council that City Council facilitate a conversation between all interested users of the park. The vote's already happened on whether we want to have the park be renamed. And as far as I understand, we can't go back. Okay.
Right, can't go back.
Okay. Is that all what we all understand? Okay. Parliamentary procedures.
So in the future, when this happens, it's easier to offer an amendment. And you can offer another amendment, you can offer, but you work your way back to the original motion. And then that doesn't go away until to where you were looking at. That comes back.
I'm satisfied with the way it went down.
Okay. I believe that concludes that. I would entertain a motion for a 5-minute recess to allow the room to be cleared.
That's
I would entertain a motion for a 5-minute recess. Is there anyone that would make that motion?
So moved.
John, and Kate second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay. In case you didn't hear, in summary, the motion for the naming tonight did not pass because we feel that there's more time needed between the two groups. We do not want to have a vote done with two groups not in agreement. We look forward to all parties being in this park. We look forward to the trail, but in the end, there's no rush, and we need more time for the two sides to be in agreement. And we look forward to a new name coming forward that has everybody's support. And that's the end of this business for tonight. Oh, we voted on a recommendation to suggest that the first vote was to not approve it tonight, and the second motion was to council that all parties have more time to talk about the name. Call order.
I've been on the Waterways Park for 12 years. That's the largest problem there.
I don't have that. Okay, the Waterways and Parks Commission meeting has been adjourned after a recess. Item B on new business is recommendation to approve Hobbs wall art.
Okay, the Eau Claire Youth Hockey, Eau Claire Figure Skating Club, Riverside Hiking Sport, Mike Sullivan and Danny Zacco have collaborated together to contribute a mural of wall art to the Hobbs Ice Arena that celebrates the history of hockey and figure skating in the Eau Claire area from the youth level all the way to the professional ranks. The theme of the mural is Dreams Start Here, which is a symbolic of many successes of young people who have made their starts here at our facility and moved on to other successes in their lives connected to the Hobbs Ice Arena. Public art consists of those displays of art installed on or within the city park, green space, or other city-owned property. The public art regulation ordinance covers the requirements for contributions to public art such as this. And you can see the mural above. This is the area as you come into the Hobbs Ice Arena, into the gathering area. It's between the three rinks, O'Brien Rink, Ackerpick, and Hughes. This would be on the south wall. As you come in here, this would be next to, actually this would not be the south wall. This would be on the wall that would be the Hughes Rink would be over here. We have a couple of door openings, that's what his is. And then comes up to the corner of the building from the Hughes Rink to the atrium. And we got another picture. And this would be on the south wall of that area as you walk into the entryway of Hobbs. This would be the would be the women's locker, or restroom, and then also a family restroom. This is our key view up there, but it shows the youth hockey program all the way from its beginner nights through the high school, mites, squirts, peewees, bantams, and the high school, and then also we've got a couple of players that have started here that have made great success with playing on the USA junior team that won the gold medal, and then all the way to the professional ranks. Similar, we have our figure skating program, and that was continued on the other one. So with that, we do have the applicant here, Mr. Chris Bell, if he would like to answer some questions, or if you have any comments to make. But again, this is a process that has to go through Waterways and Parks for approval, and then eventually to City Council for final.
Susan?
I have a question, because even at home I was having trouble seeing the whole mural. Who is the artist?
Oh, the artist is Tan Kanzen. Tan Kanzen is her name, and she's the one that put this together.
Well, I like the idea of this very much, but I have one question that I couldn't tell from what I can see, or even what I can see here. Are all the hockey players male and all the figure skaters female?
Well, that's a good question, and no, they are not.
Okay.
We also represented the Eau Claire North, the Stars here. That's the girls program. They just won the state championship 2 years ago, not last year, but 2 years ago. And we also, Pat, if you could go to the other side, and we do have there was a male figure skater there.
Okay, good. What did it speak? Contemporary? No.
Do we have racial diversity there? I just see like, I can't see on the other one, but I'm not seeing a lot of racial diversity there.
There is, trust me. There we have hockey players of all colors.
You're
And we
saying
also,
that, but what is it, but what, I don't see it there.
I can't tell, maybe Mr. Zacco, you were part of the design group that went through it.
I actually don't know on the figure skating part. On the hockey part, it would be very hard to tell with the helmets and things. So the purpose was not to identify individuals, but just to show representation of the age groups primarily.
I still think racial representation would be important.
Are these people who actually figure skate here in Claire that are being used?
They did take,
Yes, if I may speak.
Yes.
A request was put out to all the families who wanted to participate.
everybody had an opportunity to present photos or to be at the photo shoot and wanted to be there.
So these are actual people that you took pictures of?
That's correct.
Virginia, I appreciate your concern, but having spent a lot of time at the hockey rink, I just haven't seen a lot of racial diversity present there, so if these are actual people, that might be hard to come by.
But on the other, I hear what you're saying, and what greater way to encourage someone to see themselves as doing that than to have some racial diversity present on the display.
Okay.
Were there any photos that came in of people of color?
I'm gonna take a long shot here. I don't think there's very many, if any, minorities, if you wanna call it that, in the hockey program. I don't think there are.
I guess I'm also interested in the figure skaters because you can actually see their skin. I'll say that I also think that it would be important for people of color to be represented on that wall because this mural will last for a long time and hopefully more people of color will be involved in our community.
And it says dreams start here.
And so I also don't feel super comfortable about like just changing one of their skin colors since it's like an actual person. And so I wonder if there were any photos that maybe weren't used
that we
We
could.
intentionally, on the hockey part of it, tried to make it so that like, you can't tell, I think on most of the images, whether they're white, black, Asian, it's just a hockey player, period. And that was kind of our solution to that situation is that we didn't want total recognition of everybody. That's not the point. You've got youth hockey players, male and female, and they go right up the line to where the only place that you'd be able to identify an individual would be on the right end of the spectrum, and that is the people that have reached like a professional or a USA status, because a lot of the younger people in the programs recognize those people, and that's who they want to emulate at this point. So it wasn't a matter of trying to be inclusive, exclusive, whatever it might be. It was just getting photos of kids in the program into there. And if we did, and I challenge you that if you actually saw the mural, you would not be able to tell one way or the other. Even if we tried to put a person of color in there, you would not know that it was there.
Again, my concern is that the only skin that you can see is white. And I think that that's something that I'm trying to get a better sense of, and if there was.
Can you go to the figure skaters?
Yeah.
If there were images that could be used of people of color, that's something that I would be interested in.
Do you know the figure skating? I think it is Tan's daughter in there.
Well,
I think that's her there.
yeah.
Yes.
Good point, good point. So
That's-
Tan is Eastern Asian.
Eastern
That's
Asian.
the artist, and had a daughter who's a prominent figure skater.
Yeah. And I'm not so sure that there isn't two, but I don't know. But I know Tan's daughter is in there, and she would be representative of that.
Could I ask if you went to that other picture again, please? And people all over here, are those all real, I mean, is the goal to use all just real people, or can we make those be generic people? And I don't know.
Well, I know the lady on the far right, because she's a real person. But, I don't know,
I don't know,
are
it's
they
just a
all
question.
actual people in Eau Claire?
I believe
The
so.
goal with the actual
The goal
Eau
is to use
Claire
actual people.
users there.
People from Oakland.
So,
As the mover of this bringing forward, I would not recommend that we put someone not from Eau Claire just to meet the image that we wish to have.
I agree. I was just wondering if there were some other photos that were available that could be used.
I can't speak to that, just because I just don't know how many photos I received. I wasn't a part of that process. I was a part of the process of reaching out, or at least the group that we reached out to everyone and said, this is your opportunity. In fact, we fell short, and I think I dragged my son to it because we just needed more people.
Is that an answer that could be found by the city council?
We could find, we could figure that out, honestly. We'd have to reach out to the lady that created this.
Tan.
Susan?
Well, under the circumstances, since these were all real people who really are figure skaters in Eau Claire, then I wouldn't go away from that, but maybe there are kids that learn to skate who could add to this other little group, that would maybe just be a request to see if that would be possible. Because it is true that being able to see yourself in something is a big boost towards making it happen.
Denise, since you wrote originally, would you like to amend the recommendation that before the final is installed, that the images are searched for perhaps from people of color to be represented?
I would like that. It doesn't have to be like just what I want, but
Well,
yes, I would
think
feel
people
better
should-
that way.
Yeah, not saying there are more images, but at least recommend that they look see. So
Yes, I would like to make that amendment, right?
Motion to amend.
Motion to amend.
yeah, we're just in discussion right now.
Okay.
Okay, we're still in discussion. Yeah, thinking about my parliamentary procedure.
And you're gonna wanna motion and move it so you can discuss, because right now it's public comment.
Right. Thank you.
So with that public comment, can I offer whatever motion you make, just add to it that from our community.
Yeah.
Duly noted.
Does that work for you?
Yes. Okay, so,
To be the same.
okay, we're still in the public comment though. Okay. Is the presentation?
You want a motion to move so you can discuss it and then you can do it.
Right. First question though is that, Jeff, are you done presenting the
Yeah.
topic? Okay, so is there a motion to recommend approval of the wall art? Do you need, and then we'll just get the motion going. So Jeannie moves and Kirk, you second, or, sorry, John, you second.
Yeah, I'm second.
Right, Kirk, I can toss you out.
Sure.
Okay, any discussion on, is there discussion on the movement, Jeannie?
I would like that current pictures be reviewed, or from Eau Claire be reviewed to see if we can have some people of color.
Or add.
Add people of color.
Diversity.
Diversity, thank you.
Doesn't necessarily have.
It
to be a
doesn't, no,
different
but
color.
diversity.
Diversity, okay. Is there a second to that amendment? Kate? Okay, we're voting on the amendment. Would, all in favor of this amendment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the motion now contains the amendment, and we'll take a vote on that. All in favor of the amended motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. The wall art is approved. Item C is recommendation to approve the downtown river walk from Lake Street to Dewey Street.
Can I ask one question on that, Jeff, just so I understand? If we don't have a person with diversity in the hockey program, do you want us to take a community member out and replace them with a non-community photo?
No, we explicitly wanted someone from Eau
It
Claire.
has to be in the
Yes.
community.
That was included in the
No, but if we
resolution.
do have one person of diversity, you want that person replaced one of these in here. Just-
Or added.
Or added.
I'll preface that with, though, they have to be willing, maybe, can't.
Pardon?
They have to be willing.
They have to
So
be willing.
I will work with the, I'm on the hockey board, so I'll work with the board,
Yeah.
and I'll work with Jeff, and we'll read the resolution the best we can.
I think I'd like to see a figure skater, because you can't really see the hockey players.
Yeah, it's not so
And
important
down
with
in
the
this
hockey
little
players.
group,
Yeah.
I'd like to.
I know we
Especially
had one,
the
and
teams that
he
just-
graduated.
Yes. Right.
Thank you.
I know someone who's,
Thank you.
I know someone,
Get that name to Jeff, and he'll get it to me.
well, I have to think if it's appropriate for me to say.
Okay, item C tonight is recommendation to approve the downtown river walk from Lake Street to Dewey Street. Trevor?
Yes, good evening. So the Riverwalk Trail, there's two sections. The first section will be starting at Lake Street and going north along the east side of the Chippewa River up to the connection at Haymarket, as you can see here. And then the second section will be from Haymarket to Dewey Street. So this portion we want to construct, we will construct this year. We'll do a minimum of 12-foot wide concrete, but there are some areas where we will be able to get out wider, and we'll try to get a 16-foot wide to accommodate for both bicycle and pedestrian users. Some additions in the future, not with this year's project, will be overlooks at each of these street extensions, all the way up, including Grand. There will be, the connection here will actually come under the pedestrian bridge and wrap up around.
I'm sorry, what did you say about the pedestrian bridge?
At Grand Avenue, the current pedestrian bridge, the connection will actually come under the bridge.
It's under.
Yep, and then wrap up around to kind of the little plaza area
So
right
if
now.
you're going north to south, you don't have to intersect with the Grand Avenue Trail. You go on, you could go under.
You would go under, yes. Yep.
Okay.
This is, I don't know if it'd be easier for me to cover both trails or all trails in one.
Sure. Go ahead and do your whole
Or do
presentation.
you want each item separately?
Do them all. Let's do one presentation, the last question.
Okay, awesome. So this will be the second section, similar to the Lake Street to Haymarket, 12-foot wide concrete. This year, we're only going to do from Barstow up to Farwell, there will be a temporary connection with stairs right here because the library is scheduled for some reconstruction here. So we don't really know what their site will look like, so we want to coordinate the rest of the trail with their construction. And then Dewey Street is actually, the bridge will be reconstructed next year, so we'll kind of coordinate all of those together at the same time. At Farwell Street, the trail will basically mimic the north side where it will go underneath Farwell. And there will be some retaining walls along most of this trail. I think I have a couple pictures. Yep. Yeah, so we'll continue the same architectural surface that's currently in front of the Haymarket building in the Haymarket Plaza, and that will continue all the way along those retaining walls. Same railing, it'll pretty much just be an extension of what's already out there now.
Now, at Barstow Street, that's going to be a level crossing. You're not going,
Yes.
you can't go under Barstow.
Yep. Yeah, we just did some reconstruction a couple years ago and added a new wing wall on the east side of Barstow, so there's a railing there right now, so we'll reconfigure that, and there's already some concrete. And when it goes past the Hope Gospel Center, that land is being dedicated for the trail as well, so.
But at Barstow, you might have to get off and walk, or get off your bike and walk, or take your chances crossing the road.
Yeah, it would be, you have to walk across. There's already a pedestrian crossing there, so it's already set up for the trail.
Okay.
This is the existing underpass on the north side.
I don't know your questions. Let's. I see you. I'll go for finish, and then I'll ask a question at the end again. So sorry. Go ahead. Sure.
Go one more ahead. Or maybe I passed it. So these trails are all straight out of the Waterways and Parks plan. So it's on there. It's in the back here. It's back a ways, I think. But both of these trails have been marked on the Waterways plan, and they've already gone through council. That's pretty much it for the Riverwalk.
Just want to point out, there was a letter that was put at your desk from Bob Myers and from the library. The president of the library board, he had some notes regarding the section of the trail between Farwell and Dewey, and that's the part that Trevor mentioned would be delayed until next year.
Everything he addressed in his letter, he pretty much nailed it on the head that we'll have to coordinate all those projects together.
Did that finish your presentation?
That finishes the Riverwalk. That's the first trail. Well, that's two trails in one.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. Well.
So you have them each as
So
separate
Riverwalk.
items.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So right now we're just doing downtown from Lake Street to Dewey Street.
Okay.
So you finished that.
That concludes the Riverwalk trail.
Yeah.
Question?
C and D, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
So he finished C and D.
Oh, C and D.
Yes.
D is
No, sorry, just
C. Yeah.
Well, you did do that.
Yep. It's two separate sections, but it's one continuous trail.
Okay, so item C is just from Lake Street to Dewey Street, and you've done that.
Yes.
Okay. Questions for Trevor? Susan?
Are all of the trails in the city, is the surface always concrete?
No, it depends on the funding and the area. Jeff, you can probably hit on that a little bit better than I could.
Yeah, we have a couple of different trail systems that we call our priority ones. Typically have those as concrete trails. But they're a combination of concrete and asphalt. We typically like to look at 12-foot wide trails. I believe these are 12-foot, right?
Yes, they're all 12-foot.
So
I'd just like to make a pitch for the non-concrete trails for people with mobility issues. Because it's harder to walk on concrete than on the asphalt surface, whatever we call that. I just want to mention it.
Ginny?
Yes, Mr. Ivory, could you go back a couple pictures, please, to maybe can you go forward, please? Along there, I just have a question in here. I just have a question as far as greens, utilization of green. Yeah, adding some more green space. It's just a lot of concrete, and that's going to heat up, you know, in the summer, and just.
This is the Haymarket Plaza. This was approved last year. It's nearing completion.
Also, that's not.
Yeah, there is some green space in Haymarket Plaza. Not shown in this picture. Well, there's a little bit. Yep.
There's, yeah.
But this is
Is
just.
that the only tree?
Well, there's
3 or 4 birch trees right there.
Is that, I can't see.
And it's a new plaza, so it's
I don't
just.
think they've been
it's
planted.
nearing completion.
You can see one,
Okay.
there's several.
This is an existing trail.
Thank
This would be the connection.
So it seems like every time we have a bike or pedestrian trail near the river that goes under a street, we create an area that's floods out easily and becomes unusable intermittently off and on over the course of each year. So this would probably have the same problem?
Yeah, it would basically mimic the north side of Farwell that goes underneath the bridge.
Section under Farwell will potentially flood, but section under Grand Avenue, probably less likely.
Yeah, Grand Avenue would be less likely to flood, or at a higher flood stage.
But the elevation on the Farwell one would be the same as on the north side?
It'd be pretty similar. I don't know the exact elevation differences, but yeah, it'd be pretty similar.
But from Grand up to Pablo, let's say, there's kind of a meandering goat trail down there now, but that's not where this is. This is at a higher elevation, is that correct?
This would be at the top of the bank.
Top of
Yep.
the bank, yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't follow those deer trails, essentially.
Yeah, so if you walk along the west side of the Pablo Center right now, it's grayed out, ready for construction of the trail.
Any other questions regarding this portion of the trail? If not, is there a motion to recommend approval of the downtown Riverwalk from Lake Street to Dewey Street, with the note that they would not be completed section by the library? Is there a motion to approve this? John, is there a second? Kirk? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one is done. Now we're on to section D. Recommendation to approve a bike and pedestrian trail from Carson Park to Rod and Gun Park.
Yeah, I'd just like to start off by saying that title is a little misleading. This is the section of the trail we're looking at doing right now. I've been told that in the past, there was a proposal to bring the trail all the way through the west side of Half Moon and come up to the Rod and Gun Park, and it was a bit contentious at the time. So right now, we're just looking at starting at Carson Park, going to make this connection with our existing parking lot that was constructed 2 years ago alongside the new tennis center. This as well will be a 12-foot wide concrete trail. Not right now, but in the future, we're going to leave it open for a couple different amenities, such as fishing pods, pier abutment, and benches, and trash receptacles and things like that. We're not sure if the budget will allow those things to go with this year's project yet, so we'll have to wait and see what the bids come back at. But it's very similar to the causeway. We would have a kind of a secondary, almost gravel or limestone surface that goes along the river, or the Half Moon Lake right here, and then we would have an area like a concrete abutment so that we could put a fishing pier there in future phases. This will allow an extra area for kayak and canoe launch. I know there's a couple up in Bronze Bay, but this is an existing picture right now. So this is where the fishing pier would be. There's quite a bit of open area. Otherwise, the rest of it is kind of marsh, wetland, and cattail.
So where does that, what's the road that goes into Carson Park, whatever that road is?
Carson Park Drive.
Carson Park Drive. So this trail would butt up against Carson Park Drive. Then you just cross the street to get onto the trail?
Correct.
Okay.
Susan?
So I kind of remember the controversy from the past, but not really. I seem to remember it as having to do with when the Y was proposed for this site, and then also when the tennis was being built, that there was concern about damage to the lake, damage to the wetland area. Is that resolved in your design? Does that avoid those questions that were raised?
Actually, the concern was over on the west side of the lake here.
Oh, okay.
So actually, when the tennis center was approved, the concept of the trail was approved as part of the of that. So this really was not controversial. It was over on the west side where the city a number of years ago did some brushing out of some areas in anticipation of extending the trail on the west side up to Rod and Gun Park. And the neighborhood hadn't really been informed about that activity going on, so the neighborhood was concerned about that. So before we extend this trail up to Rod and Gun Park, we'll be meeting with the neighborhood in terms of coming up with a design and location.
That's why we're just proposing the stub right now to show that we will, future plans show going that way.
John?
Is that parking lot in the lower left, is that open to the public?
Yes.
Available?
Yep. So when the tennis center was built, the parking lot was actually a city project, so it's a city parking lot. And we're actually using the leftover funds from the sale of this land to build this trail as well. So, but to answer your question about the damaging of the shoreline and wetlands, I don't think there will be any disturbance. What we would do this close to surface water would, we'd pitch the trail backwards, so any runoff from stormwater would come back into this area, and we're probably going to do some sort of swale or small ditch there so that the water can be stored somewhere.
Kurt?
It just, if the trail were never to extend beyond that, would it be worth building this trail anyway?
Yes. Yeah,
Because
we're
it's for
anticipating.
parking access?
Yeah, we're anticipating more. There's not a lot of usage on this parking lot right now, so we're anticipating more usage of that parking lot for kayak and canoe access, and eventually when we get that fishing pier in there, that'll also bring in some more travel as well.
So, and really overflow events at the park. People would park there, and now they
Yeah,
have,
now
I've
they can.
I've parked back there and sloshed through some terrain that it would be a lot nicer to walk on a trail. So I can see where, even if it doesn't get extended, it's good. But you have those tennis courts penciled in there. I mean, what's
Those
going
are
on
part
there?
of the tennis center. So this is an old aerial. The building actually sits down here. This is line work from their proposed site plan. They have yet to construct those. Those are the outdoor tennis courts. I'm not sure their plan on timeline for that, but that was part of their approved site plan, was having those external tennis courts.
I have a question about the tennis courts. Nowhere in Eau Claire that I'm aware of has a place that just has like a bang board where an individual can practice the tennis strokes on the bang board. And I know we're not discussing that, but is that there at all? I mean, is that there?
I'm not sure. There may be something inside. I'm not aware. I haven't been there.
I would say, okay, I just, okay, thank you.
You may mention it, so there's only going to be non-motorized boats, kayaks, and canoes, no ramp for any motorized to go in here?
Correct. Okay. If you want to go to a couple some of these pictures. So this is the existing dock at Browns Bay. So this is what we look at doing in the future handicap accessible. And then this is the causeway. So this is kind of what we would envision with this project. And I don't, like I said, I'm not sure if it would come this year or if it would be added at a later date. But something similar to this, that, you know, we have access down by the water, but it's not concrete or asphalt so close to the water's edge. And it allows that fishing or kayak access.
Any more questions regarding the Carson Park? I'm sorry, the bike and pedestrian trail from Carson Park to quote unquote Run Gun Park? If not, is there a motion to approve the recommendation? Tom, is there a second? Jeannie, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, and then Trevor's third part here would be a recommendation to approve stair replacement at Carson Park Birch Pavilion.
So the steps at Carson Park near the Birch Pavilion are in pretty bad shape right now. They are kind of made out of a field stone, and they've been patched with asphalt and mortar over time as things have decayed. We recently received a $45,000 grant from the DNR to help fund this project. Right, believe good. So we'll be looking at doing, the steps actually kind of start right in this area, and then halfway up there's kind of a round seating area. We'll be looking at redoing all of that. And within that round seating area, we'd like to do a pillow cut limestone, similar to what's on the Grand Avenue pedestrian bridge right now. And it's also, there's a lot of pillow cut limestone along Carson Park as well. So construction of this would go this year. We're looking at doing all retaining wall with that pillow cut, but depending on budget and bids coming back on that, we're looking at an alternate bid with kind of larger block retaining wall as well. It would still kind of have a decorative feel to it, but that is an alternative. And then as well with that, we'd look at doing lighting, some pedestrian lighting through the stairs as well. And that will also come with budget constraints. There's some current existing pictures of the stairs right now.
That's not lighted at all right now, is it?
No, so there's no lights.
After a heated football game, it will be pretty dark.
On that picture right there, at the landing area, that looks like some pretty nice stonework. Is that what you're talking about, replacing with the block wall?
This would all be replaced with, if you go to the next picture, it'd be similar to something like this, that limestone.
Maybe because we're not up close to it, but it looks like some nice stonework. And that's
It's all kind of just thrown together, you know, field stone with mortar.
I love field
There is a nice, you know, it's a charming feel to some of it, but it's in pretty bad shape all the way through.
So it's not worth saving.
I don't think we could save that section, no.
Well, if you run short on your funds, you should just pass right up to it and pass away from it.
Tom?
I've gone up those steps several times, and every time I do, I wonder why they're not closed. Because they are just,
They are closed.
They're closed now?
Yes. We've had them closed now for almost a year.
Yeah, what were you doing? Steps.
I park down below and I take the dog up and walk around the park and like that. The dog make it up, but I have a tough time. I can only imagine, just a little bit of history, I can only imagine, you know, they talk about Hank Aaron staying at YMCA in downtown Eau Claire. I can only imagine him walking to Carson Park. I can only imagine him walking to Carson Park across the causeway and up those steps. So, that's what
It dates from the WPA, doesn't it?
It does.
Those steps.
Yes, you want to read your
Maybe you said, or you got a grant for $45,000, but the total cost is what?
We don't have design done yet, so we're just starting the design phase, so we don't have a cost yet.
John?
Yeah, Trevor, you mentioned earlier that the new staff will have a lighting in there so that people can walk at night, they can see the staff. Is that what you planning to be a part of your estimate?
Yes. Yep. we would like to do that this year.
Yeah, I think that it's important because there's more lighting that,
Right.
stuff like this, we need to have lighting at night so people can walk, but then go.
We'd also look at clearing some trees too to have, at that circular overlook, to kind of have a view of Hackley as well.
Susan?
Am I right in thinking that the pillow cut stone is to reflect the kind of old stone that's like the baseball stadium and the
Yep.
entrance markers? So I would say that even if they cost somewhat more, it would be important to the character of the park to use the pillow cut rather than the, whatever it's cheese.
Stack block.
Yeah, because to help the farm, the whole park be more coherent.
Yeah, the new Causeway has some of it, and Kirsten Park has it already, so it'll blend in nicely.
Any other questions? If not, I would take a motion to recommend approval of the stair replacement at Carson Park. So, John, is there a second? Second. Ron, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you, Trevor. Item F is recommendation to approve the 2020-2024 capital improvement plan. John?
Good evening. My name is Josh Solinger. I'm a business analyst here with the city. I think it's the first time that I've addressed this group, so thank you for having me. Prior to my time as business analyst, I actually worked in the city's budget office. So in addition to talking about the projects in the CIP under the purview of this commission, I'll also throw in some financial information as well. Good. So some background about the capital improvement plan. So what goes into it? Expenditures that are $5,000 or greater, or which have assets as a result of the expenses with a useful life of greater than 1 year are considered capital costs for the city. We do a 5-year capital improvement plan. Year one of that plan are the projects for which we are actually going to appropriate expenses. So as of January 1st, 2020, the projects you see in 2020 that are approved, the funding becomes available, we can go ahead and start those projects. Years 2 and 5 are really there as a planning document. Those are projects that have some underlying plan associated with them, whether it's a strategic plan, a parks and open spaces plan, waterways plan, and those are the years in which we've scheduled them, in order to sort of balance need, priority, and funding availability. We operate under several different funding policies that we have to keep in mind when preparing a capital improvement plan. And so as year 2, as we go ahead a year, and year 2 becomes year 1, year 3 becomes year 2, we are often adjusting our projects, the costs of the projects or the nature of the projects for things like inflationary costs, emerging trends, emerging technologies, things like that. So it's not uncommon to see a little bit of movement in years 2 and 5 as those years roll closer and closer to implementation. Why do we do a capital improvement plan? Believe it or not, not every city out there does. But we do it to make a plan for how we're going to spend limited municipal resources and plan for our capital investments in the community, to have a priority, a schedule in place to ensure sound fiscal policy and good capital investments. And then how do we plan for it? Our projects come from adopted planning documents of the city. I'm going to get into this a little bit more here shortly, but these plans listed along the bottom, when you're looking at the capital improvement plan as a document and you look at the justification section for each of our projects, they often reference other plans that are adopted at different points in time. Some of them are newer, some of them have been around for a while, and will be due for update or replacement soon, but we use some combination of the city's strategic plan, the comprehensive plan, parks and open spaces plan, and waterways plan in planning for our capital projects. So I won't spend a lot of time on this because obviously you are all aware of your role in recommending approval to the city council of the CIP. This is where you can find some references to that in the code of ordinances. And then the action that you are being asked to take tonight is before you, should have been passed around. It is a motion recommending approval by the city council. So before I get into the funds, I'm just going to touch on funding sources. These are the funding sources that you will see specifically in the projects before you this evening. We use fund balance when that's available in our capital funds. To the extent that we underexpend on our projects in a given year, we will carry some amount of fund balance in those capital funds that we use first and foremost as a funding source to pay for the projects. This allows us to avoid issuing debt, essentially, or offset some of that amount. State aid, often when it comes to parks and recreation-based projects, are going to take the form of grants, and that's exactly what you would find in the CIP you're being asked to provide recommendation on. The Community Enhancement Fund, this is where our room tax dollars go. So under state statutes, we collect room taxes from the city. 70% of those room taxes are remitted to Visit Eau Claire. The 30% that the city retains is utilized for the purposes of activities that promote tourism. And in Eau Claire, our parks and recreation programming are a large source of tourism, not just from other states, but really other nearby communities. They come here to utilize our parks and recreation programming, and that's tourism. The general fund is used as a source often, and I want to just very briefly get into the distinction between a transfer versus an advance, because you'll see references to that language. A general fund transfer is a true just transfer of the money. The general fund is just giving money to one of our capital funds to use. An advance is a little different. There is some expectation of repayment associated with that. Think of that as sort of an internal loan from one fund to another. And then general obligation bonds are also used to fund these projects. Those are 20-year bonds, oftentimes tax exempt, but not always. And ultimately, the full faith and credit of the city is utilized in those bonds. So jumping into Parks and Recreation Capital Fund, this is just a very brief overview of the funding summary. I'm not going to go line by line here just in the interest of time, but you will see that basically a combination of 4 out of the funding sources I just touched on are used in 1 or more years of the plan. Moving on to the next slide. So this is where I want to touch on the consistency with those other planning documents that I just talked about. So what this is showing is that in each year, all of our projects that are being proposed support at least one of the planning documents that have already been adopted and that the city uses to guide its activities. In fact, in some cases, we've got projects that support 3 of the plans. And so, although you can't see it on this slide, every single one of the projects, 100% of them in every year support at least one other plan of the city. Go ahead. Yeah, thanks, Pat. And then this is another way of visualizing our expenses. So the dollar amounts are in the table up above, but what I really want to touch on are how we spend our money as it relates to whether or not it's for the procurement of a new asset or if we're just maintaining or replacing what we already have. And really what I want to draw your attention to is the bottom table where it is expressed as a percent. So you can see in virtually almost all of the years, with 2022 being the exception, the majority of our projects are for the maintenance or replacement of existing assets. There are very few dollars in relation to total expenses that are being utilized for truly new things. And so now just to get into the new assets. So, and going back to the discussion earlier about the fact that it's a 5-year plan and we're only really appropriating expenses for that first year. I'm going to just touch on the projects that are in the first year of the plan. Obviously, if you have questions about any of the other projects, I'd be glad to answer those, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to touch on that first year because that's where the dollars are actually being appropriated for expenditure. So in this case, the Southwest Dog Park and Boat Launch, we have proposed $100,000 in 2020. The original location of the boat launch, through the process of planning and design, we discovered that the original location of the boat launch, it's considered a wetland area, so we had to relocate that launch further upstream. Unfortunately, doing so means that we're actually dealing with a higher riverbank at that point, and so in order to comply with American Disabilities Act requirements, we needed to bring in more fill to provide for the grading to essentially accommodate ADA access to that higher riverbank. So as a result of that, we are requesting additional funding for an existing project in 2020 to provide for that ADA access essentially. Our park asset management system is another project we've requested. This is for the purpose of ongoing implementation of a system that we already have in place. This is a exactly as it describes. It's a system we have to track our assets of the city. It also allows us to do work orders. So as the community continues to grow, and keeping in mind things like the Cannery District, as our park space expands and the demands on staff get higher as a result to maintain our infrastructure, that's going to result in more work orders. And we want to make sure we have the technology in place to deal with those work orders as efficiently as possible. So this is just helping us further implement a system that we've already used. It's just not currently used by all of our departments or divisions within community services. So this is just an expense related to us continuing to implement that existing system. I think we can go ahead and go to the next. So our maintenance and replacement projects, in referencing that percent breakdown earlier, here's another visualization where you can see how many more of our projects are maintenance and replacement projects. The Carson Park Baseball Improvements Project, that is tied with replacing aging infrastructure within the stadium, bleachers in particular. The Wilson Park Water Feature, this is sort of the fountain at Wilson Park, sort of the one central recognizable feature of that park. We had a main drain line underneath the fountain fail. And so technically that fountain's offline now. And as a result of the location in which that main drain line failure occurred, addressing that failure would actually result in the need to essentially almost entirely raise the fountain in order to get to where the failure occurred. In addition to that, we have a streets project that will be occurring on an adjacent street to the park. And so one of the things that we propose doing with this project is replacing that fountain. And at the same time that we do that, we're going to provide for a water feature that will tie into existing water and sewer mains that are there as part of that streets project that will already be occurring. We can tie it in at that time. And the current fountain that's there, because it's what's called a self-circulating fountain, it's not tied into city water or sewer. So we have to chemically treat that water, and any maintenance of that self-circulating system actually requires confined space entry on the part of our staff to access an underground vault room where that equipment is stored. So by doing a water feature that's tied into city water and sewer, we will eliminate the need for chemical treatment and for confined space entry by our staff. If the project is approved, we do plan to open this up to a community input process. So it'll involve both in-person workshops as well as an online survey component. The baseball stadium fan deck, this is removing essentially the existing deck and replacing it with a composite lumber deck. So that's just going to result in less wear and tear of the deck. It's going to be a higher quality product and easier to maintain. So this is something else that, in addition to maintaining or replacing an existing asset, we're actually going to conceivably lower the ongoing maintenance costs associated with that by using something that just requires less attention by our staff. End-of-fall treatment is another ongoing expense associated with something we're already doing at Half Moon Lake. This is a targeted herbicide treatment of Half Moon Lake. We do it at such time in the year as to avoid any damage to native plant species that we want to have there. This is targeting invasive species. The Owen Park Well Refurbish Project, this is essentially refurbishing the high capacity wells that we have in Owen Park. Owen Park is prone to flooding. These high capacity wells help prevent that and actually will direct some water toward Half Moon Lake. And so this is refurbishing those high capacity wells. They're just at a point where every asset has a useful life and we're approaching a point where we need to address these.
So I have a quick question.
Yeah.
The water feature at Wilson Park, the plan is to have it pump through water and then immediately just go to the wastewater treatment facility?
It would be connected to city water coming in, and then yes, it would the water would then go into the city wastewater system.
How much water would that use in like a day?
It would just depend on the outcome of the design, and part of that we envision, if approved, would be driven in part by that community input process. So moving on to the Hobbs Ice Arena Capital Fund. This is just, again, looking at the funding summary here. Primarily is community enhancement or room tax dollars. There are 2 years in which we contemplate issuing general obligation bonds. In 2023, at this point we contemplate requiring an advance from general fund, but I go back to my earlier conversation about as these projects move closer and closer to the year of implementation, some of these numbers are going to be subject to some amount of change. So really the primary focus being on 2020 community enhancement dollars and general obligation bonds. And then again, just consistency with plans, highlighting again, and if you look at the CIP, this is again 100% of the projects in each year support at least one of our planning documents. In this case, all of the projects support one plan. And then just again, looking at new assets versus maintain or replace. In this case, we do categorize some of the new assets as both new assets and maintaining and replacing. Just the nature of the project, it was really kind of hard to truly pull apart what would actually be a new asset versus replacement, so we kind of created this hybrid both category. But in this case, again, the first 3 years of the plan is 100% maintaining or replacing assets that we already have. And so neither of these new asset or both projects are in 2020, but I do just want to take a moment and touch on this. The Hobbs Ice Arena improvements, in this case we contemplate doing some additional restrooms on the, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but on the back side of Akrovic, there's going to be an addition to the actual building there and some infill that's put in once that addition is made, and that's where some additional restroom facilities are going to go. There will also be some storage added. And then the 2023 cost is basically just for the design of that project. 2024 then is the construction.
We would also be looking at an agreement with the high schools to fill out some spaces that we would be providing in that area. And I think that may be 2025 or higher. So that's a future project that comes.
So for maintenance and replacement projects that are in the first year of the CIP, the Hughes dasher board repairs, this is, the dasher boards are essentially the boards around the rink upon which the glass barriers are fixed. And along the bottom of those boards, there's something called a kick plate. And that's what this project contemplates primarily addressing, are the kick plates along the bottom of the dasher boards in Hughes Rink. We also propose spending $10,000 on an ice system evaluation. So this is funding that will allow us to sort of ask the question in working with a consultant of what the long-term plan or future of the ice system of the ice arena will look like. From that information that we will glean from this process, we would then use that to inform future capital improvement costs. The first step is just doing this kind of high-level evaluation of the system. Now Fairfax, fund balance, there is some fund balance remaining in the fund that is available for use in 2020. The rest of it will come from community enhancement or room tax dollars.
That's your last fund too, right?
Yeah. Yes,
Maybe you just go
frozen up, I can just keep going. We're slide 16, Pat. I believe so. Yep. So again, just another visualization, again, consistency with plans. Once again, 100% of the projects that have been proposed comply with other planning documents of the city that have been adopted. In some cases here, similar to the Parks and Recreation Capital Fund, we do have a couple of projects that actually support more than one plan of the city. And then, again, another visualization of the breakdown between projects for new assets versus maintenance and replacement. It's an even 50-50 split in the first year of the plan. And then primarily then in 2021, 23, and 24, 100% of the projects are maintaining or replacing what we already have, the one outlier being 2022, where we will have more expenses for the purposes of new assets. And in 2020, we are looking at a new water play feature. This, essentially, we've got an area of the pool where it's difficult to ascertain the depth going from shallower to deeper. It also is an area that presents an opportunity for us to add sort of a fun interactive feature for patrons. And so that's what we contemplate doing here. It'll be both an interactive feature to promote, better customer service, but also addressing a current safety issue. And then the pavilion structure is something that's being contemplated as well. There is a need at the pool for an additional pavilion. As people seek shade from the sun, we do really only have one option for that at this point. If you go there, I just recently did a tour myself, and it was pretty evident that people, there's fewer areas of shade to seek than I think the demand currently is. People appear to generally make it work, but a second pavilion structure would be helpful for providing better customer service. And then also in 2020, as far as maintenance and replacement goes, we do propose renovating the existing concession stand, and along with that, adding, while we're already doing that, adding some additional pavilion space onto the concession stand. The renovation would primarily deal with expanding the space in the food preparation and storage area. It is very cramped back there. That's another area that I did a walkthrough on my tour, and it's quite cramped. And this is really just doing more of an operational enhancement, along with, again, expanding or improving customer service with some additional pavilion space. And then last but not least, we do have $3.8 million scheduled in 2022 and 2023 within tax increment district number 13. This is in the Cannery District area, and the design is currently in process, but amenities that are being contemplated include things like landscaping, river overlooks, various recreation amenities, performance area, restrooms, and pavilion. That is the end. so I'd be glad to take those.
The tax increment district, that one is already approved, it's already established.
So this is actually working through the approval process right now. I believe there's been one joint review board meeting. There's a whole process where it'll have to come back through the planning commission and the city council, but it is in progress.
Are there any other questions for Josh in his presentation? Thank you.
Did real good, yeah.
Thank you for being.
That was tough duty, Josh.
You went in the door part for last.
It's tough to put the budget on the last on the agenda.
Any discussion among the commission members? Seeing none, I would take a motion, and I believe you need to read the motion as printed here to make it all official. So I would take a motion to approve the capital improvement plan. Is somebody that mind reading something? Kate.
I move that the 2020 to 2024 capital improvement plan presented as a document on file in the office of the city clerk and open to the public inspection during normal business hours is recommended for approval by the Waterways and Transportation.
Sounds very natural, thank you.
Thanks.
Is there a simple second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Kate, if you don't mind filling in the top portion, and we'll pass it on to Susan. But we're not done yet. We have the 2019 special events list.
Okay, I'm only gonna hit a couple of these. I think we may have broken a record for this Waterways Parks Commission for time, maybe not. You
Probably has some.
So, coming up next week, we got the July 4th celebration in Carson Park. There's gonna be festivities, all day long. There is on our city website the list of activities going on. We'll be having a baseball game with the Express playing. We'll also have the Northern Light Cowboys will be playing in the park, along with some youth soccer groups that will be playing. So if you get a chance, come out to the park. It's going to be a good day. And then, of course, that's concluded with a fireworks show at 10 o'clock. And the other thing I'll just touch on is that we will have a City Hall open house. As many of you may know or may not, is that we're going through a major renovation at City Hall. We'll be having an open house on, it actually should be 7/25. It's going to be Christmas in July. And so that date should be 7/25, and there'll be, the plan is to have food trucks, several of our city operational vehicles down there with staff to talk. So, and then also there'll be tours of the new improvements of City Hall. So if you have any, I won't go through everything, but if you have a question on any of the other special events.
What about the opening of the plaza?
That is actually scheduled for next Tuesday, July 2nd at noon. That just came out, so if you have an opportunity to do that, that'll be July 2nd, noon for a ribbon cutting and grand opening. And as, you know, that is going to be another area that people will really want to do special events at. But we have made a decision within city policy that we would reserve that area except for special events. So, and those special events have to make sure that all the public is invited.
No weddings?
Not unless they want to invite the public.
And feed.
Just have wars, you're inviting the
Food truck.
public.
Will we resume meeting at City Hall soon?
Good question. That was something I was going to bring up. That would be, you know, certainly this commission's, if you want to continue meeting at City Hall in the North Conference Room, we certainly can. This area is also available. I know we've been here for almost a year now, but you know, I'll leave that up to you as far as if you want to resume our meetings down at City Hall. I know for Pat, it might be somewhat more convenient for him because his office is at City Hall, mine is here, but I'm fine anyway.
Is the North Conference Room changing in size, form, or?
No, same size.
It's not being.
Yeah, we had remodeled that actually shortly before the major remodeling, so it'll be the same as what it was before.
But we can, well, that would be tougher in that room because we don't have this much space in the.
Yeah, if we had this big, we'd probably come back here.
Right, we'd have to come back here.
Would that be something that we would vote on if you want to change your meeting?
No, there's no.
We're just, okay.
We can discuss it. We can-
Chairman decision.
Let's go to the open house and see if we like it.
Right, yeah, we like our house. Okay, we're almost.
But we're not going there until our earliest meeting would likely be in August or September. Because there is going to be a time period with moving in a lot of folks, so.
If that concludes the special events list, there's also the director's report, if you want to touch on that?
Yes, the pickleball courts at McDonough were colored and coated the first week of June. They had a grand opening today, ribbon cutting, and Ron was there. I had double meetings booked today, so, but I think you said 70, 80 people were there.
We had, about 70 people. Attending there, Terry Well, City Council President was there, and Todd Paul representing your staff, and Julie Booth. And if you haven't seen the new courts, we raised $160,000 to do the work and also pave the road and the parking lot. So our MOUs, we might have something like a mortgage burning. We'll have a MOU burning. I don't have to mortgage my house anymore.
Yeah, right.
But and we'll have free lessons coming up on Wednesday mornings and Thursday evenings. So anyone is welcome to come and participate. We'll have equipment there.
Perfect. We upgraded some power supply at Half Moon Lake Beach area. The site experienced a underground power failure over the winter, and so it was something that had to be repaired. We replaced the sand at Zephyr Hill Playground with engineered wood chips. We poured in ADA access points into the pickleball courts, and then we overseeded field turf at the soccer park, Jeffers Park, and the ball fields.
When you seeded there, did you aerate or
Yes.
something?
Yeah. Otherwise, it really doesn't do much good if you just want to.
That was what I was going to say.
Right.
Good job.
Yeah. Forestry Division, we completed our spring planting and continued to remove stumps from previous tree removals.
I should wait.
Oh, go ahead. Do you have a question?
I just have a question when you're talking about the trees. How is it determined, or who goes around looking for what trees have died?
Well, we have a forester in the city. That's part of his job along with our forestry crew. Right now, a lot of what we're doing is the emerald ash borer litigation.
Yeah.
So that's what we're out there
Because a
doing.
neighbor had asked me, because one of the trees anyway, and so she had asked
Yep.
me, who does that? Like,
Well,
when you touch them?
many of the times is that we'll get a call from a resident saying, my boulevard tree is dead, and then we know that.
Okay.
But we do have a forester that does go out and periodically, he drives to check and see the trees and all.
Okay.
We did respond to some storm damage on Friday, June 14th. We had 11 trees down in the city, and Mr. Ivory there had one, but it was on the private side of the boulevard, so he got his chainsaw and took care of that. So we did, we continued the cleanup on the Monday, so. And then recreation, I'll just, very briefly, it's been a cold spring, and now we're in the summer. It's starting to get a little warmer, and we're hoping, but you can see our attendance numbers are way down, and it's our attendance is based upon how the norm is. If it's not warm, we're going to see lower attendance. So the hope is that as we move through summer, it warms up. And we have such a small window where we're open there from Memorial Day to Labor Day. So
But wasn't it a record last year?
2 years ago. Yeah, we had
So
over
kinda
71,000,
averages
so
out.
we're kind of averaging out, right, you're right. And then just an update on the Acrobic project. We've been doing we removed the floor at the Acrobic, right? That was cracking up. We didn't have any type of system that would prevent the frost from going very deep, so we put that system in there. So it gives us the ability that we can keep ice on year-round on that rink without driving frost down. There has been some cases where rinks will have frost 20, 30 feet below, and then it cracks up the floor. So that's improving that. We're also in that Acrobic rink, we're building a mezzanine up on the north end of the rink, so it's going to create a better experience for viewing the game for some of our parents. And then what we did too is we painted the entire shell with the I-beams and so forth that were all rusted, so we had those treated and primed and painted. So when it opens up this fall, it's going to be a brand new, essentially a brand new looking rink with new dasher boards, new floor, new locker rooms for the youth teams. No bathrooms yet. Josh had talked in the budget that we have that planned in our CIP, but we didn't have enough money to finish that up, so that's part of our CIP. So with that, any questions?
Seeing no questions, we accept the director's report, and I will take a motion to adjourn. Kate moves, second. Second. John seconds, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689. Or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.